Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Planning Committee. We get started. Have we any substitutes nominated for this meeting? No,
none, Chair.
And I remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or other interests they might have in relation to the items included on the agenda. No? Okay. It's not recommended that the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the items of business on this agenda. Item 4, the minutes of the meeting of Planning Committee 1 held on the 10th of November to be approved.
Move them, Chair.
Councillor Curtin, Councillor Bellinger, thank you. Have we any withdrawn applications?
Yes, Chair. Application 20/41/01104/LAA is withdrawn. It was being brought to you because we had an outstanding objection from Sport England. They've now withdrawn that objection. Okay,
thank you very much. And we'll get on to the applications. So application number 19-00662, Pond Quarry, Lightcliffe Road, Brickhouse. Thank you. Can we have the officer's presentation?
Good morning, Chair. Kirsty, could you allow my video, please? You've turned me off. I think. Yeah. Good morning, afternoon, councillors, should I say? I can see it all now. If I can just share my screen with you with the presentation. Are you able to see that, councillors?
No.
No, not yet.
I apologise, it did work earlier.
Yeah, it's coming through.
Thank you.
That looks good.
Right,
Yeah.
Lovely. I'll start then. This application is in two parts. It's a full application for the infilling of a former sandstone quarry known as Pond Quarry with inert material suitable for residential development, and an outline application for residential development up to 75 units with all matters reserved except for access. So the infilling comes first and then the residential development. This slide sets out the key issues. Objections have been raised, and the following point, making the following points: impact on residential amenity, noise, dust and vibration, both during filling works and development of the housing residential development, impact on air quality, infill material would be hazardous to human health, impact on local infrastructure, schools, doctors, etc. Nature conservation, traffic impacts during infill and occupation of the site, and safety. Since writing the report, 6 additional objections. The additional points raised include lack of affordable housing, insufficient notification of committee date, time it's taken for application to be brought to committee and timing of committee in the current circumstances, and lack of protection on protected species and biodiversity mitigation measures. The site is designated as safeguarded mineral resource on the proposals map and identified as such as policy M4. In the east corner of the site, there is an area of sandstone which hasn't been worked. The local planning authority agreed with the applicant that this area of stone is environmentally and economically unviable to work, therefore conclude that there is no need to safeguard this resource in this instance. The site is allocated for housing in the replacement Calderdale unitary development plan for up to 75 houses. It's identified in policy H7. And here's the site. It's located to the west of Lightcliffe Road and north of Granny Hall Lane, and south of Springfield Grove. So for if committee should be able to see, this is Springfield Grove, Lightcliffe Road and Granny Hall Lane. The site is surrounded mainly by two-storey semi-detached houses around this way. There is some terraced houses on Lightcliffe Road here, and again, semi-detached houses. Site is to the northeast of the site, is Lightcliffe Cemetery. Conservation have confirmed that a well-designed scheme is unlikely to cause undue harm to its locally designated heritage asset. And to the south is Brickhouse, which is approximately 1 mile to the south. Just provide you with an aerial view of the site. The area of sandstone which remains is this area here. Again, just to show you the topographical area of the site. So this is the area of sandstone which remains. It's actually been stripped of overburden and soils, although there is a amount of coverage there still. It shows the cross sections. So this one here is cross section from Springfield Grove down to Granny Hall Road with the void, and then across from Lightcliffe Road and across with the void. So this is a void that's been remains following the extraction of sandstone. At its deepest, the base of the quarry is approximately 20 metres below the surrounding landform. Some deposit of waste has occurred in the northwest corner. This has ceased on appeal when it was established that no planning permission or permitted development rights existed for backfilling of the site with waste. I'm going to go through a few slides with photographs of the site. So along here, you've got Lightcliffe Road, Springfield Grove. You see here the cliff face which remains. This is the area up here which hasn't been worked. And there's a small area up here which some lumber filling has occurred. These are the TPO trees. This is the view further along Granny Hall Lane. So this is the edge of site, number 121 Granny Hall Lane. The applicant has indicated that to fill the site, to provide a platform for redevelopment, would require approximately 108,000 cubic metres of material, allowing for settlement. It's expected the fill operations would take between 2.5 and 3.5 years, depending on availability of material, with approximately 20 vehicles in and out per day. The material for infilling will be inert, clean material suitable for end use as a residential development. Conditions recommended 21 and 22 on page 32 are there to control the type of material imported into the site. It should be noted that an environmental permit would be required from the Environment Agency, and that would control in detail the material to be imported. Environmental Health notes that the infilling operations will be limited in time, and once developed, the site would not create ongoing noise or dust issues. Subject to controlling conditions, they have raised no objections to the application. Their conditions, as recommended, are set out on page 30 of the report, conditions 8 to 11. Highways have been consulted and they've raised no objections to the infill operations, subject to controlling conditions again on operation times and numbers of vehicles, lorries. We specifically say vehicles here because it will include HGVs and tractor trailers. And that's set out in conditions 4 and 7. Just a final aerial photograph which better shows that exposed cliff face here. As you can see from these previous slides, the site is covered in regenerative scrub. The application has been supported by a number of ecological reports covering protected species, biodiversity and biodiversity net gain. The Authority's Conservation Officer for Countryside considers that these reports adequately address the protected and biodiversity issues. There is an issue, a specific issue regarding a badger set, and I must advise members that Natural England are the relevant licensing authority in respect of issuing a licence to interfere with badger sets for development purposes. The applicant has provided information on mitigation measures, including alternative location and habitat. The authority have received a response from Natural England, which indicates that a licence would be granted. However, for completeness, we've included recommended condition 13 on page 31 of the report, requiring details of that relocation to be submitted to the planning authority. Whilst the development can deliver biodiversity improvements within the site, it is acknowledged that there will be a deficit in provision, taking into account the current provision and post-development. The applicant has provided a calculation of the current biodiversity value of the site and post-development value. This calculation is set out on page 23 of the report. And our Conservation Officer, Mr. Hugh Furman, is available to provide further details for that. Allowing for a 10% biodiversity net gain, the applicant has agreed to contribute £42,500 to the council to provide off-site delivery of 1.85 biodiversity units. Now, for the purposes of this calculation, residential gardens are not included in this calculations, as there's no control over how these are planted. However, any landscaping within the scheme is controlled, is calculated, sorry. In view of the above, the council's conservation officer raised no objections subject to a number of conditions. These are conditions 12 to 15 and 23 to 24 in the report. On the previous slide, I indicated there's a group of TPO trees in the northwest boundary. The council's tree officer has not raised any objections, however, recommends that trees are protected during construction as set out in recommended condition 16. Turning now to the outline application, which is for the residential development of residential units on the site. An indicative master plan has been provided. You see here on the slide. The application for housing is an outline with all matters reserved apart from access, which will be taken from Granny Hall Lane. In the report, it's mentioned in landscaping, and part of this area here with the TPO trees is part of this on-site biodiversity mitigation. Highways have been consulted and accept in principle a vehicular access from Granny Hall Lane. The applicant has provided a robust traffic generation estimates, and it is considered that development would not have a significant impact on the operation of Lightcliffe Road Junction with Granny Hall Lane, and therefore raise no objections in principle, subject to details and delivery of electric charging points and infrastructure requirements set out in the report. No objections have been received from the lead local flood authority, subject to conditions requiring drainage details. The Environment Agency also have raised no objections. The applicant has indicated that the proposed development will take the form of a mix of 2.5 storey houses with some 3-storey and terrace properties. Whilst design and layout are reserved, it is considered that a development appropriate for its location can be achieved. Local plan policies indicate that development of this nature should achieve a density of at least 30 dwellings per hectare. The indicative layout plan indicates a density of 41 dwellings per hectare, therefore it's acceptable under policy. Turning to infrastructure and other contributions, these are set out on pages 26 to 28 of the report. The Assistant Director of Housing has been consulted and indicated that 19 houses should be affordable housing units. This is based on the number of properties to be built. A viability assessment has been undertaken and reviewed by the council's expert. The report takes into account the landfill operations and the additional abnormalities involved in bringing this site into a developable standard. Therefore, it is accepted that the full 19 affordable units cannot be delivered. However, 11 affordable units can be delivered. The Assistant Director Education indicates that no contributions are required, and the Assistant Director Neighbourhood indicates a cumulative sum of £174,406 for open space would be required. Highways require a £50,000 contribution towards traffic calming and a £37,500 for sustainable transport. The applicant has agreed to enter into Section 106 agreement to deliver these contributions. See here that the visibility display for the access to Granny Hall Lane is achievable. Just this is the Granny Hall Lane at the moment. This is the junction onto Lightcliffe Road. The site is allocated for housing in the development plan. Impacts of development can be controlled by condition, and once completed, development will not have an adverse impact on residential amenity. Biodiversity and protected species have been addressed to satisfaction of the local authority. Development, as I've mentioned earlier, would require a licence from Natural England to deal with the protected badgers, and the Environment Agency would control the importation and of materials. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to satisfactory completion of Section 106 agreement and the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Can you take your screen down?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Curtin. You're muted, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just unmuted now. Thank you, Chair. I've got one or two questions that I would like to ask. First of all, I mean, the biodiversity here in this quarry must be huge. And have we got anybody who can speak a little bit more on that? Because I would imagine that this place is teeming with wildlife. It's well overgrown, is the quarry itself. So I would like some further answers on that, and what effect it might have on the wildlife of the quarry. Secondly, most of the properties around here will have been built, especially the semi-detached properties will have been built after the quarry was worked or just during the working of the quarry. And I'd just like to know, I mean, 2 to 3 years is a heck of a long time. And what impact will the dust and noise have on local residents, which I think is going to be absolutely ginormous. And then thirdly, on a highways point of view, I'm not sure which way the vehicles, if we've got 40 vehicle movements a day, 20 in and 20 out, that's quite substantial on the road network round there. So I presume, and I'm only presuming, but hopefully our highways office will be able to answer this, that the vehicles will leave the site via Granny Hall Lane and then enter Halifax Road. And what I would like to know is, where will they go from there then? Will they head up towards Hipperholm, or will they head down towards Brickhouse? If somebody could answer those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Officers?
Yes, if I could play, first of all, it'll be Hugh Furman who can answer you, Councillor, regarding biodiversity. And whilst he's...
Yeah, okay, thank you, yeah.
Whilst he's connecting to the system, if I could just go to infilling. If it was a straightforward infill application, then that would probably be considerably longer than the timescale they've indicated here. This is a very specific type of engineering landfill to create the end use as a residential. Now, part of the conditions do include having a dust management plan, a plan for reducing mud on the road, and etc. If I can just bear with me, I will just find those conditions for you again. So you've got condition 12, which is a construction and environment management plan, very much details about condition 8, a construction environmental management plan. There's two very similar conditions here. One relates biodiversity and ecology, and the other one relates more to the issues we're talking about here. So that this is ensuring that we monitor and we have controls over pollution, and we have a set of procedures should there be problems that we can actually go back and enforce, etc. So with a quarry of this type, obviously it's once you get to the top of the quarry, you have issues regarding particularly noise and dust. Whilst it's in the actual void, the the faces actually provide some protection. So as you work up the quarry and fill it up, then that is when we have to take more care about issues of dust, noise and vibration. It can be managed, and it has been managed in other locations. So that is what the condition 8 there is for. And I think Andrew will be able to answer you regarding the movement of vehicles. However, it is not intended to put a traffic routing condition on the application. That is found to be not meet the tests of 6 tests for conditions. However, it would depend in some respect as to the source of material, as to where the vehicles will be coming from.
Yes, but I think it's important for myself there as a ward councillor for Hipperham and Lightcliffe, whether these vehicles are intended to go through the Hipperham traffic junction or not. But also, you know, I would be concerned if they were going through Brickhouse town centre, because they would have a major impact down there as well.
I think probably.
So I would like some answers.
Yeah.
I would like some answers on that. You know.
Well, as I say, it really depends where the source of material is, and that's this state at this present moment. Know where that source of material is, because it's got because the type of material it has to be fit for residential after use. To be very clean material, so it's not going to come off any contaminated sites.
Thank you. I understand that, but nevertheless, you know, 40 vehicle movements, heavy goods vehicle movements a day through the Hipperham traffic junction will have a major impact up there on what's already an used junction. But secondly, it would have a major impact if it was going down in the Brickhouse direction. But there's only those 2 routes that they could take.
Yeah.
So I would like some comments from our highways officer, please.
Yeah. If I could hand over probably to Hugh first on
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
biodiversity, just in the order of your questions.
Yes, okay, that's fine.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you, Councillor Curtin, for your question about wildlife. I think you might be surprised to hear that the site isn't quite as rich as you might imagine for biodiversity. I think there's a couple of reasons for that, really, and that's over the last 10 years, it's been subject to periodic sort of earth movements and vegetation clearance. It's not had any sort of conservation management, so there's been an invasion of invasive species. So it's not had a great biodiversity value on a sort of Calderdale level. That's not to say it's not important on a local level, and certainly people who live around will benefit from the birds breeding there, for example. Now the consultants have done ecological surveys. They've assessed it for protected species and highlighted bats and badgers as being the only likely protected species to be present there. In terms of bats, they've not identified any actual roosting habitat for them, but they have observed bat activity over the site. In the case of badgers, you've heard from Anita about that. So they've identified a main set on site. So badgers are certainly present there, and to a large extent reliant on the local gardens for their feeding, as well as to some extent the quarry itself.
Is it,
Okay,
is it
thank
not
you.
Have you got any
important to
follow-up
protect the?
questions, Councillor?
Is
Sorry.
it not important there to protect the bird life though?
There's no protected birds on the site. There would be, yes, there would be a reduction in the number of breeding birds in the area, because although there would be, the amount of habitat that's being created as part of the development is relatively small. So there'd be a reduction in habitat like dense scrub that birds like to nest in. So yes, there would be a reduction in the number of birds on site.
Okay, can we have a response from Andrew, please, regarding the movement of vehicles? Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair, Committee. Yes, as Anita said, I mean, well, there will be an impact on the local network. Clearly, these are residential, local distributor roads: Granny, Hall Lane, Latcliffe Road, and to reach the S644, the S641 further afield will require use of these roads. I had a quick look while Hugh was talking. The submission documents. I don't recall, and I can't see anything about the routing. And obviously that would need to be addressed at a later stage. We have actually got a condition though on the what's called the dilapidation survey condition, which would require us to survey the roads before and after the infilling, so that any damage could be addressed by the developer. So as part of that process, we'd have some discussion about the routing. But I mean, these routes, whilst will be an impact, I think we'd struggle to sustain an objection on that basis, and that's why I haven't objected. It's a temporary impact, and there are buses and other uses on those routes, and there are no restrictions I can see on those roads. So that's why I think that the conditions that Anita mentioned wasn't put forward to try and control the routing. It's perhaps a question to put to the developers. I presume they'll be speaking later. But no, I can't see anything else on that on the submission documents.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Bellinger, then Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Bellinger, you're muted.
Apologies, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One is the loss of green space to the area. I don't know if any officers can actually tell me where the nearest green space is today, because obviously once this area is filled in, there's obviously going to be a lot more properties there. What have we got with regards green space for the public? And the other question I've got is concerns with regards to materials that might actually have to come out of that site as well, because it's with it being a sandstone quarry, surely they're going to have to make various levels in there for the development. And if so, then is there going to be, noise pollution disruption with breaking some of the sandstone quarry down to get those levels? That's it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Regarding materials coming out, I don't believe there's any need for materials to come out. The sandstone has been worked, and actually, in fact, the majority of the waste is what would be quarry waste has also gone. There is a condition on there regarding any contamination, which may have to be dealt with, but that would be under a specific licence and conditions. So I would not expect any reworking of the quarry. What they'll have to do is, as materials brought in, it'll be of a certain standard to re-engineer the layers. It's a very technical way of making sure that each layer, as they lay them, is stable, and so it's worked up in layers so that the whole site is stable when they get to the very top. So I don't think that there will be any need to take anything out of the quarry, bar potentially some invasive species, as he was mentioned. That would have to be controlled under licence, and any contamination that might be found, which no one's aware of at the present moment. So I hope that answers your question on that. Regarding open space, you'll have to bear with me because I am not that au fait with the area. Obviously, we've got Lightcliffe Cemetery to the north of the site, and I'm just trying, as I'm speaking to you, have a quick look in the committee report regarding open space, because I did have some details from the open space people. They're saying that the requirements for the development should be met by enhancing the quality of existing facility in the vicinity of the sites. I'm taking that there is some in the area, but I'm not too sure as to where, because I haven't got a map up at the moment. I'll try and find one whilst you go on to other questions.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. One on the off-site biodiversity compensation. How close to the geographically is that going to actually be used to the site under development, and can we be given some idea as to in what way it might be used? I'd also like to know how the calculations for contributions to educational facilities are worked out, because it said that even though there might be 75 houses here, there'd be no contribution required to education. And the third question is on page 17 of the officer's report. It says consideration should be given as to how the proposed development addresses the street scene with building lines set back to prevent development becoming over dominant on the street scene with building heights no greater than 2 stories in relation to the setting of Lightcliffe Cemetery. Because from the site plan that was showed to us, it looks as if the housing that's to be sited along Lightcliffe Road is right up to the pavement. So I'd quite like to hear some comments on that.
Regarding the design and layout, all matters are reserved, so we haven't got those details, and that would be something we would look at reserved matter stage. My understanding is the taller properties would be more towards the centre of the site. With regard to education, I can't unfortunately provide you with the formula they use. They were consulted, and that is the response we get back. I've got back. So I can't enlighten you how they come to that response, but that is what I've got. If I could just pass over to Hugh regarding the biodiversity net gain again.
Hello again. Sorry, I was frantically trying to look on the mapping system to see how close the net gain potential sites would be. But again, you probably know better than me, in that 3 sites have been suggested. One is Winnie Hill Park, that's the closest one, which I would have thought was only a mile away from the site. The other one's a Wellhome Park, and further away Cromwell Bottom. And the idea is that it would be sort of like for like habitat, so the creation of woodland stroke scrub on one of those sites.
Thank you. Can I just ask if it's possible to address the setting of Lightcliffe Cemetery by way of conditions at this point in the process?
Unfortunately, no, Councillor, it's not, because it's a reserved matter. When that is submitted to us, then we will take a view on the design. Obviously, the applicant is aware of the comments, and it is hoped that they will take those into consideration when they come forward with reserved matters of the scale and setting of the residential units.
Thank you.
Okay, any further councillors wish? Sorry, Maria, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to come back on the education point, Chair, if that's okay, because obviously the education service look at the likely capacity of the schools within the catchment area for the future and the likely number of pupils that will be generated from that development. Obviously, they have told us that there is sufficient capacity at those schools, hence why they are not asking for a contribution.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. In that case, Sarah Dimmock. Oh, sorry, Paul. Excuse me, Sarah. Paul Bellinger.
Oh, it's all right, thank you, Chair. I've just been reading this, and I wonder if officers can just clarify something for me with regards going back to the open space. It said, in addition to policy GCF1 and RCUDP policy OS5 requires that new residential developments to provide for the recreational needs of their residents in accordance with standards set by the council. The Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods has been consulted and notes that the plans show that no open space is to be provided on site. The requirements for the development can be met by enhancing the quality of existing facilities in the vicinity of the site, accumulated sum of 174,000 based on the number of dwellings and bedrooms. Whereabouts is this facility in regards to this development? How far away is it?
It's similar to those ones that Hugh has identified. I believe they also have some facilities that we haven't identified specifically what sites they wanted to improve, and that'll be a discussion we'll have with the assistant director to identify which ones. They've just come back with a figure at this present moment in time. It's something we can clarify later on.
Okay.
Obviously, you would look to the closest sites possible because those would be the ones which would be the best fit for this development.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No? Well, in that case, can we go over to Sarah, please? You have 5 minutes, Sarah.
Okay, thanks. I'm representing over 150 objectors and I live adjacent to the site. We believe that if this application is granted, even with extensive conditions, this committee will be in breach of its own policies and the NPPF. The proposal falls seriously short of the guidelines which clearly indicate reasons for refusal, particularly sections 8, 9 and 15. I urge you to properly consider all the evidence before you and not be influenced by the threat of a planning appeal. Financial implications for the local authority are a consideration, but any misinterpretation of policy resulting in a judicial review would incur a significant financial penalty. Every point made by the applicant which suggests this application complies with the guidance in the NPPF imagines this is a site already suitable for housing and does not say how the infilling, engineering works and compaction could in any way comply with planning policy. A site inspection is paramount as the photographs really don't show the site as it is. As you are aware, previous applications failed due to lack of information, and although this application runs to hundreds of glossy pages about the housing development and its proposal, it does not properly address the pre-construction phase. The filling of the void in the quarry, which will take substantially longer than any house building, is completely ridiculous. The applicant's own calculations say at least 3 years it'll take to tip the 108,000 cubic metres of material required, with HGVs visiting the site every 15 minutes. Throughout this period, compaction will take place, leading to noise far in excess of that legally permitted for 60 hours each week. And this is in the middle of a residential area congested with 5 schools within a half-mile radius. The number of school children passing the site should ring alarm bells in itself. 3 years ago, the land was being prepared for this application and contractors blocked pavements and roads, forcing children out into the middle of Lightcliffe Road. And there is no on-site parking, so cars were parking along the local roads, creating further traffic problems. There would be an increased risk to children given the site is on a blind bend, and particularly if those children are distracted. The Director of Highways says the only reason he does not object is because 3 years of road disturbance is considered temporary, and we do not agree that this is temporary at all. Paragraph 170 states that planning policies and decisions should enhance the natural and local environment by providing both new and existing development from causing unacceptable pollution or land instability. Environmental Health have said there is an unacceptable maximum noise levels for the new properties on the east and south of the site, and those houses will need non-opening windows. They've also said that reports dealing with noise pollution and air quality have failed to address and remediate the noise which existing residents will suffer in the 3-year infilling phase. Environmental Health also comment on stability and contamination and say that the management of air quality must be in accordance with the West Yorkshire Low Emission Strategy, which has now been adopted by Calderdale and I understand as a zero emissions policy. The noise and air pollution generated by that 3 to 3.5 years must always be at the forefront of your mind. Photographs provided by the applicant show that in as late as 2016, this site was full of foliage and trees and not scrubland, all of which were removed by the owner in 2017. Yorkshire Wildlife Trust was critical of the methods used to calculate biodiversity, which initially gave a net gain of 35%. The new calculation has now given a net loss of 33%, but it's not accurate as it is based on the state of the site in May 2019, immediately after the complete stripping of the surface of the land. Yorkshire Wildlife Trust have carried out their own assessment and have calculated a net loss of 60%. The Environment Bill says that where work is carried out to take advantage of an altered baseline, it should be disregarded. And you can see this is exactly what's happened. Such a large loss cannot be offset, and there's a clear and significant breach of planning policy. Mitigation in respect of wildlife on the site has allegedly been addressed, but we do not agree with your officer's conclusions. Experts say that the urbanisation of badgers by deliberately excluding them from their natural habitat is not a viable solution to their conservation. Policy NE16 concerning the protection of species certainly excludes this site from development. More importantly, the district land valuer says that this application is not viable. I know there's a desperate housing shortage, but permitting this development and all it entails to satisfy a housing need demonstrates a lack of resolve by the council in upholding their principles regarding conservation, air quality, preserving urban green space, the health of the community, and any perceived benefit would be outweighed by the very significant and demonstrable harm, which is clearly in breach of the NPPF and local planning policy, and this application should be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You can wait. Members, any questions for the objector? I can't see anybody. Yes, Councillor Baines.
It's not a question, Chair. It's David Curtin has lost contact and he can't. He's having difficulty getting back in. And I know this is a site that he was extremely interested in, which is, I think, is.
Okay.
So can somebody sort it out pretty quickly for David?
Yeah. Gurpreet, are we okay if we just wait a couple of minutes till he gets back in, or what's his position?
I don't think there really is a specific position. I'm happy to wait, obviously, a couple of minutes, but if it sort of goes any longer, then we would have to continue. And I think if Councillor Curtin does miss out on any more, then he wouldn't be able to vote on this item.
Yeah. So I'd rather wait and see if we can get back on.
Yeah,
okay.
A couple of minutes. Technology isn't perfect, I'm afraid. So yeah, no. A couple of minutes I think is reasonable, but I wouldn't want to stretch it to 10, 15 minutes type of thing. But yeah, a couple of minutes is fine by me.
Okay, is anybody in touch with him? He's not here, is he? No. Welcome back, David. Hello,
I
David.
seem to be back in. I seem to, I'm just absolutely fed up with this.
Yeah, it is a problem, but you've frozen again, but we're waiting for you.
Unfortunately, Chair, it does appear to be his broadband and not access to the meeting.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we suspended the meeting and waited for you, so you won't miss anything.
All right. Well, that's. Have you actually done that?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. I'm absolutely fed up to the back teeth of my connection here. Andy Morehouse is supposed to be looking at it, so I'll have to get onto him again.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colin, you wish to question?
Can I just suggest that if the bandwidth might be helped if you turn off the video?
I will do that then and see what happens. Yes. Okay, I can hear you all now, so we'll try that then.
The only problem will be is if you want to ask questions, you'll have to go back on.
I'll have to turn it back on, yes.
Yeah. So has anybody got any points or questions they want to raise with Sarah? No? Okay, thank you very much. And my papers have just disappeared. Oh, they're back. Councillor Blagborough wishes to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Well, how do you follow Sarah? She's painted you with a very comprehensive picture. So I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking you for allowing me to speak on behalf of a large number of residents who could not attend in person to show you their strength of support in the community against this development, which will have a negative impact on many lives and will also have an adverse impact on the local environment, including the loss of some nature. I appreciate that where possible, planning officers try to find a way to pass development. I also appreciate that the recommendation reached have not been easy. Having said that, I'm certainly not convinced that the right recommendation has been reached, and I will be urging members to refuse or defer this planning application on a number of grounds. The most important relates to the viability of the actual plan itself. Filling in the quarry will have an adverse impact on the community, not only in terms of noise, but equally in terms of additional traffic, vibration not from only the large vehicles, but also the necessary equipment needed to compress materials. The hours of working causes great concern, and past history suggests that there have been issues in the past and conditions have not been met in the past. Lightcliffe Road is already a dangerous road. When works were undertaken a few years ago, we saw examples of blocked pavements, meaning lives were being put at risk, in danger, especially as this is one of the major walking routes to several schools. Filling in the quarry will mean thousands of lorries, and given the timescale, suggests that the access to this is not adequate. It's going to be accessed from Granny Hall Lane. We already have traffic issues on Granny Hall Lane. It's also comes out at a junction of Granny Hall Lane meets Smithy Carr Lane and Lightcliffe Road. No consideration has been given as to these lorries, where they're going to actually come from, which has already been mentioned. And if allowed, we are going to see potential fatalities, especially if the vehicles use Smithy Carr Lane. It is very, very steep, yet it's probably one of the quickest access to one of the main roads on Bradford Road. So one point of access is equally causing one point, from my point, is additional congestion and noise pollution, but also the damage to the concrete roads and the roads surrounding roads, which leads to substantial problems and potential costs to the council, which I don't think have been adequately met. I do not feel that this application is viable. The DLV valuation is based on infill being completed within 24 months and not 42, thus making the scheme less profitable and leading to less affordable houses. There have been previous concerns raised in connection with subsidence, health, highway safety, and of course, nature. I have a great deal of concern over pollution. I'm aware that this development will have an adverse impact on people's lives in terms of the air quality, in terms of the dust being created. The council themselves state the council will seek to reduce the amount of new developments that may reasonably be expected to cause pollution. Pollution being in the form of noise, light, air, and water, of course. This development will only add to the congestion that we are experiencing on a daily basis, and has not been taken into account in relation to the additional houses proposed in the local plan. I would ask members to consider this application carefully, and where possible, find a way to refuse this highly complex, highly controversial application and explore the viability. Thank you so much. No problems at all. I would equally ask if you are mindful to permit that actually additional conditions are required in relation to the improvement of the local roads. Actually, I've already mentioned Granny Hall Road is a dangerous road. And the main reason of the other access road from Halifax Road ends by the one-stop shop Cars are frequently parked there, and there are regular accidents occurring in this vicinity. Residents have provided me with several emails on this application, and they have very strong feelings that this should not, and I request, and should not be permitted, because this will have a negative impact of the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Have any of the members got questions for Councillor Blackburn? No, I can't see anybody. Okay, thank you. In that case, the agent, is it Richard Slater, wishes to join us?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As you've heard, I won't sort of repeat what the officer said in too much detail, but obviously the site is allocated for residential use in an established residential area, in a very sustainable location with easy access to local services, public transport and recreation. Therefore, in this account, the proposed development satisfies the objective of the NPPF for presumption in favour of a sustainable development. However, as has been made clear, this is a disused quarry, which has not been quarried for decades, and therefore the delivery of backfilling this quarry will be challenging and will have an interim impact. However, as has been demonstrated by the submission and the subsequent assessment by the council, it is felt that this engineering operation can be managed through the duration of the 2 to 3 years. It will be endorsed by the NHBC, which will control the quality of the material that's coming into site and the way that it's engineered to ensure that the delivery of this allocated site for residential use can be delivered. The proposal is obviously the reuse of a brownfield site, contributing to the delivery of housing to reduce a shortfall in the Calderdale 5-year housing land supply, and therefore should be supported. The NPPF paragraph 118 also states that substantial weight should be given to the value of reusing brownfield sites, and support should be given to remediating despoiled, degraded, derelict, contaminated or unstable land, such as the application site. Ultimately, the redevelopment will have a positive impact on the quality of the local area. It will improve and expand the variety of the housing stock, visually complement the local character, landscape and streetscape, create a safe, inclusive and accessible environment, and furthermore, it will have a positive impact environmentally. Although the site is covered in scrubland, which has been discussed previously, the diversity of existing species is limited. Bat foraging has been identified, however, no roosts have been identified. And of course, we've discussed the badger set has been discussed, to which a positive solution has been agreed with the school to relocate the badger set in advance of any development works. The development is an opportunity to compensate for the loss of this scrubland, whilst improving the biodiversity through high quality landscaping on site and the off-site contribution to ensure a net gain for nature. With regards to the calculation for this, just picking up on the points earlier, there is no one set calculation established in the UK, so there tends to be a difference of opinion of how that amount is reached. However, we have worked very positively with the biodiversity officer and the case officer on this to ensure a satisfactory outcome. Ultimately, the development site for residential use will not adversely impact the wider area, and no demonstrable harm to the setting, character of the area, amenity, highway safety or other material planning considerations in due course. In the interim, with regards to the engineering works, all of these factors could be managed. To conclude, the principle of residential development for this former quarry is compliant and consistent with the national policy guidance and the objectives of housing delivery as set out in the NPPF, Stage Policy H7 of the Calderdale UDP and the emerging local plan. It has taken some time to get to the committee today. However, we have worked tirelessly with the case officer and the various consultees to ensure that matters raised have been discussed and addressed to reach positive conclusions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for the agent? David? I can't see you.
I'm okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Members, comments, further questions, proposals?
Chair.
Councillor Bellinger and then Councillor Curtin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I understand that we have a need for development and for more housing. However, I do have concerns with regards to this site due to the extent of the site and the fact that it will totally eradicate the whole of the biodiversity of that particular area. I think at the end of the day, I think there could be a compromise here where some of it could actually be saved and the site not actually be as big as what's outlined here. But unfortunately, I think unless that can happen, I can't support this site under policy NE16 and policy NE17, which is protection of protected species and the biodiversity. So I'm not going to make a decision just yet, but that's where I actually stand at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curtin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got the same concerns as Councillor Bellinger there, but I've also got major concerns about the local road network around this area. All the roads are very narrow, very busy, and as Councillor Blackburn said, the junction between Granny Hall Lane and Halifax Road is an accident waiting to happen. I would be concerned about the 40 vehicles a day heading towards Brickhouse Town Centre and or Hippo Home, which I think will cause major problems. And just to let people know as well, we've got 5 schools in the area, 3 primary schools and 2 high schools, which I think it would have problems for children going to school there. And I would propose that we refuse the application on those grounds, Chair.
Sorry, for clarification, on the grounds of
the major impact on the environmental that Councillor Bellinger's just mentioned, and also on the highway, the major impact on the highway network of the area.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Porritt and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as far as the biodiversity is concerned, I would expect that there's ways that we can mitigate that in and around the local area. And so I wouldn't necessarily be against the proposal on those specific grounds. But I am really concerned about, I know we're saying that 3.5 years is temporary in terms of the impact of these vehicle movements. We're talking about the HGVs going on and off the site specifically, but surely a site such as this will also need other vehicles associated with it. People who are coming to work on the site, coming in their own vehicles. And I would need to be reassured that those vehicles aren't going to cause a danger. We're talking about, parked vehicles where on busy roads where children are having to go to and from school. As much as you can control when the HGVs are moving around and put conditions on that, I am very concerned about the extra parked vehicles. Is there going to be space on the site for those vehicles to be? Are we going to have some sort of a sort of site office with parking, etc.? I can see Anissa's got a hand up, so I think she might have an answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, Anita wanted to come in first.
Yes, if I could just point to Councillor to condition 3, which requires details of a contractor's compound, staff parking within the site during infilling operations. So that is a condition we have proposed, requiring those details to ensure that those vehicles and everything are off the surrounding roads and are contained within the site. And the site is large enough to contain those. May have to move around as the infilling operations happen, but it shouldn't be without too much difficulty to control them on site.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Well, pretty much the same as Councillor Porritt. I'm concerned about the movement. I'm concerned about the residents in that area while this 2.5, 3 year thing goes on. It's not just the wildlife that they're going to be scaring away, is it? It's going to be the residents. The traffic, the loss of wildlife, the noise, the air pollution, all of these things point to something that is really not desirable. 75 houses is not a huge amount. I know it contributes towards our local plan and the amount that we do have to build, but nevertheless, to me, it's not a good thing. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Baines, did you have your hand up a minute ago? No, sorry, Councillor Hutchinson.
I do have concerns about the site as it is now. There's a gateway onto Lightcliffe Road that's broken down, and you've got a very high cliff edge from the quarry face. So I do have concerns about the current nature of the site and safety for young people who might gain access to it in its current state.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? So at the moment we have a proposal from Councillor Curtin. Sorry, Councillor, are you still there? Yeah.
I am. Yes. Sorry, Chair. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. What grounds again of the objection? The refusal?
My objection to it is on grounds of the environmental things and the biodiversity of the site. I think it would have a major impact on that, but I also think it would have a major environmental impact for local residents of noise, dust. I mean, 2 to 3 years. Okay, it might be 3 to 4 years. Who knows? But I just think, it's a heck of a long time, is that? And it would have a real impact for local residents in that area, and all these houses have been built since this quarry virtually ceased to exist. And it would, 40 vehicle movements a day on those very narrow, busy roads there. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. So, I would move on the highways issues as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bellinger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have too many concerns regarding this application, so I'm actually happy to second Councillor Curtin's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Have we any amendments? No, well, I would like to make one. I'd like to propose that we go with officers' recommendations. I understand the points about the disruption and about the traffic, but I think that has been dealt with. The traffic has been dealt with by the highways officer, and I think that the environmental impact has been shown to be fairly low. So I would propose that we go with officers' recommendations. So if anybody wants to second that, otherwise we'll go with the other amendment. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, Gurpreet.
I'm not seconding it. I just wondered whether it would be useful for members just to hear from the planning officers in terms of the reasons for refusal. Obviously, it encompasses the biodiversity element and the highway side of things. Just to hear from the officers in terms of how defendable they are.
I think also the environmental issues for local residents, the dust, the noise that's going to go on for a heck of a long time.
Yeah. Sorry, planning officer.
Anita, do you want me to answer? I mean, obviously, your technical experts have looked at all the information submitted with the application and are happy that there are not going to be those adverse effects. Particularly you raise issues such as the environmental pollution, biodiversity, but as you will have heard from your own experts, there is the site isn't as rich as you would believe, and we are getting a mitigation package that will deliver betterment in some respects. So again, really, it's just the fact that you are basically going against your officers' technical considerations in this aspect.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Sarah, you can't join in the conversation at this stage. Thank you. Officers, members? Okay, well, I made a proposed amendment. Is there a seconder? No? Okay. In that case, we go with the motion proposed by Councillor Curtin. And are officers clear what the objections are?
No, if we could just be clear on what the reasons for refusals are, Chair, because I think Councillor Curtin did add sort of dust and noise pollution to his original.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat them then. It's the biodiversity of the area, the impact it would have on wildlife and the biodiversity, but more importantly, the impact it would have on local residents that live around the periphery of the site there for noise, dust, nuisance that's going to go on for 2-3 years, maybe even longer. And I've got concerns about the 5 schools within the area, but also the major impact it would have on 40 vehicle movements a day plus other vehicles on the local roads around the area, which are only very narrow and very busy. So traffic issues as well.
Okay, Maria, have you got that?
Just to summarise that, yeah, just to summarise then, it's basically refusal based on the negative impacts in relation to biodiversity, noise and air pollution and highway impacts.
Correct, yes, thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we'll go to the vote to refuse the application as it stands. Sorry, David, Councillor Curtin, did you want to comment?
No,
Oh, sorry,
I'm happy to go along with that.
Sorry, you're voting.
No.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to the vote now.
All those in favour of Councillor Curtin's motion, can you show hands again, please? So that's 1, 2, 3. All those against? That's 3. 4. Gurpreet, can I have some advice, please? We've had that motion refused, but we haven't got an alternative motion.
Yeah, you've summed it up, Chair. So that motion, excuse me, that motion does now fall, and it's back to members again to put another motion on the table. As similar to what happened at the last planning committee, members are under a duty to make a decision on this application. But yeah, it's back to members to make a decision. Obviously, it has to be a majority decision. So the ball is in your court, members.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Blackberry, you can't speak. Councillor Porritt.
Thank you, Chair. Not to raise a motion at this point, but as I'm quite new to planning, I have endless questions. And really, I suppose my concern here is how defendable our position might be in going against officers' proposals, just because we have got considerable concerns and they do need to be addressed, but they appear to be, at least in theory, being addressed in the conditions that are being set. I suppose our concerns are whether these things are really, as much as you can put it in writing and say we've got it covered, I still do have concerns about whether the conditions can be met. And so I suppose a lot of us are in that sort of bind of, if it goes ahead perfectly and there's no dust and there's no noise and people aren't impacted heavily, then I would be happy to see more housing in Calderdale. But you can put conditions, and then if they're not met, and then it's got to be taken through, you know, various channels, but people are still suffering. And it's finding that balance. And can we seek further clarification? Can we seek more information? I don't know. I'm putting it out there.
Maria?
Yeah, councillors, chair. Yeah, obviously we can only put conditions on applications where they are enforceable. So we do have the ability to enforce. Obviously, if there is something that happens that is a health and safety issue, then we have the ability to do things as temporary stop notices. We don't use those lightly, but where there is a health and safety issue, then we will. And that's the whole reason of conditions. It gives us something to enforce on.
Thank you. Councillor Bellinger?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to put forward a motion then, to defer this to another meeting, to another time, until we can actually get some clarity on some of the concerns that we actually have today, because there's quite a number of questions really that a number of us members have here today that have not been answered clearly enough. So I think really with this application, because we're struggling to make a decision today, that I put forward that we actually defer this for another time until we get some clarity on those questions.
Chair, I'd be quite happy to second Councillor Bellinger's comments under the circumstances.
I don't feel that there's any grounds on which to defer this. I don't think there was a major shortage of information, and it is a responsibility of the Planning Committee to come to a decision. Other comments? Sorry, Gurpreet.
Yeah, just to clarify, I was going to ask Councillor Bellinger what exactly he wanted the further clarification on. The motion has been seconded by Councillor Curtin, so it is a motion that's on the table. But I do think you need to have some specific clarification in terms of what you need more information on. As Councillor Sweeney has said, that there is a lot of, you have been provided with a lot of information, and obviously the point of a deferral is to, you know, to try and move this forward. And if getting if officers aren't aware of what information is needed, then the deferral isn't really going to do what you want it to do. So unless you've got specifics that specific questions that you need answering, then a deferral might not necessarily get you to where you want it to get you to.
I understand, thank you. I think there were questions with regard to vehicular movement that I think couldn't be answered. The movement of the badger set, you know, there's no confirmation on when that's going to happen. I'm sure there were a few other questions from members as well that needed some clarity that I don't think we've got clarity on.
Well, I'm just not exactly sure how we manage the dust and noise issues. I know that the planning officer mentioned about that they can be managed, but how will they be managed?
Sorry, Anita.
Thank you, Chair. On the issue of badgers, we wouldn't be able to provide that information to protectors and their relocated whereabouts. We would not want to put in the public domain. That will be subject to a National England licence, and they control that, and they will have to be obtained prior to any works, including clearance of the site, and that's the condition we set out there. So when it has been agreed and granted, we will, as authority, we will know about that. But as I say, we wouldn't make it a public information for the obvious reasons. Regarding traffic movements, I think Andrew has identified we can't put a condition on regarding traffic routing, and it really is up to where that material is raised from as to which route it will come down. There is a condition on the application regarding dilapidation, movements in and out of site at certain times of day to avoid the school drop-off and pick-up times. You've got a condition there regarding contractors' management. With regard to dust and noise, we would expect to see a scheme of dust control. They're pretty standard. They involve wetting down a site to ensure that dust doesn't get into the atmosphere. That all these measures are measures which are carried out on a daily basis by reputable developers. And it's not necessary that the applicant will develop at the site if not sell it on with the planning permission. So we can't say it will be the site owner who will develop the site, but these are standard construction methodologies. They are enforceable conditions, and as Maria has already said, we can enforce or we can bring in health and safety if there is a specific issue. The site itself isn't unstable, and the methodology to fill the site will take into account any stability issues because it's an engineering operation. I think that probably covers those points there, unless there's something I missed, Maria.
Thank you. So there are doesn't feel like there are grounds for deferring it. And I'm not sure the advantage of us coming back again with the same information and the same presentation is going to make it any easier. So have we got any proposals? Well, again, I would propose that we go with officers' recommendations. Is there a seconder? Thank you, we have a seconder. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, Gurpreet, am I not allowed to do that again?
sorry to, unfortunately that the proposal to defer by Councillor Bellinger was seconded by Councillor Kerr.
Oh, sorry, yes.
So that
has to go for a vote.
That is a motion on the table. So
yeah, sorry.
Do we have any amendments to that?
Well, in that case, yes, I propose an amendment that we go with officers' recommendations. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. There is a seconder. Oh, I'm losing the will to live in this. So it's the amendment goes first. We have a seconder. We have the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment to go with officers' recommendations? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? So that 2, 3. Thank you. No amendments, no abstentions. No, that was everybody, wasn't it? In that case, we go with officers' recommendations. That's now sorry, I'm not finished yet. That's now the main proposal. So can we have a vote on the main proposal, please, to go with officers' recommendations? All those in favour? So how many is that? 4. And those against? 3. Okay, thank you very much. It was a very difficult one. Thank you, everybody. And we now go with office recommendations and we move on to the next item. Okay. So the application is 19/01303, Forest Cottage Community Centre, Cousin Lane, Halifax. Can we have the officer's report, please?
Thanks, Chair. I shall just share my screen. Can everybody see that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Application is 19/01303 for land adjacent to Forest Cottage Community Centre off Cousin Lane in Halifax. It's a local authority application and it's an application for outline with all matters reserved. The proposal is for 8 number flats and 9 number houses. And just prior to presenting the application, members are asked to note that a further objection was received. The objection was concerned with the proposed building work, highway safety, the impact on people's mental health and quality of life, and that they would prefer that the proposed development would use the same existing access road that serves the community centre. So slide 1 shows that there were 7 letters of objection received with an additional late objection. It sets out the key issues that were considered during the officer's report. A summary of all of the comments received are set out on page 39 of the officer's report. This slide shows the site outlined in red. To the north is the community centre. To the east is Cousin Lane and dwellings alongside Cousin Lane. To the south are a group of detached properties, and further south are properties along Moorlands Crescent. To the west of the site is the rugby club grounds. The site lies within the primary housing area designation of the current local plan. There's no relevant or recent planning history on this specific site. This shows an aerial photo of the site. Again, the community centre to the north, Cousin Lane to the east, the detached properties to the south, and the rugby club grounds to the west. This slide shows the indicative site plan. Whilst it is in outline with all matters reserved, the assessment considered whether this level of development could be accommodated on the site in relation to amenity of both existing properties and the proposed dwellings. Just some photographs of the site. On the right hand side is the community centre. The site would be to the left. This is a view south along Cousin Lane with the site on the right hand side. Further view into the site from Cousin Lane. This is one of the side elevations of the property adjacent to the site. This is the southern boundary of the site along this fence here, with the western boundary along here. Looking into the site from the approximate entrance point, the community centre building on the right hand side, the western boundary along here. That's a view northwest towards the community centre. Further view southwest across the site. On this view southwest, you can just make out the properties on Moorland Crescent. Again, the community centre in the context of the proposed site on this area of land. This final photo shows a site notice, but also the properties on the opposite side of Cousin Lane. So in summary, there were 7 letters plus an additional letter of objection received. The key issues are set out and were considered within the officer report. Just one point of note, members are asked to note in respect of the infrastructure requirement. In this instance, a condition is proposed to be attached to require any future developer to enter into a planning obligation prior to any development taking place. This is because the council's unable to enter into a planning obligation with itself, and therefore the condition proposed ensures that should the land be sold and subsequently developed, that the infrastructure requirements relating to the development of the site remain attached to that permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, restore the screen. Any questions for officers? Councillor Hutchinson, then Councillor Bellinger.
Thank you, Chair. You mention in the report a Grampian style condition being applied. What is a Grampian style condition? But I also wondered, in terms of amenity, it states that the separation between New Fern, which is a residential care property, from the closest proposed dwelling is 10 metres. 10 metres sounds a bit of a shortfall on the normal separations. And my third question, there's no mention at all about affordability of the housing that's being proposed. At what point should that be introduced? Should it be introduced at an early stage?
In terms of the Grampian condition, basically it's a negatively worded condition which restricts any development taking place until a certain condition is satisfied. And in this case, it would be that any future developer would have to enter into a planning obligation which would agree to deliver the infrastructure requirements in relation to the development proposed. In terms of the separation, the guidelines set out in Annex A, if it was a side to secondary elevation separation, then the 10 metres would be considered acceptable. And in the context of the overall site, again, the layout is indicative. It's not set in stone because it's outlined with all matters reserved. And again, that could be looked at in terms of any future reserved matters application that came in. So in terms of that separation, it's considered that with appropriate boundary treatments, etc., if that indicative layout became a proposed layout, then it would be considered acceptable based on that indicative layout. In terms of the affordable housing element, because all matters are reserved at the moment, that could be a consideration in terms of any future applications. And also the condition is worded so that that could come in at that stage as well. Condition number 7 refers to infrastructure requirements.
So may I ask how we can be assured that that would be invoked at that point?
In terms of affordable housing, a note could be put on the file in terms of this application, and also in relation specifically to condition number 7, or there is potential, I'd have to check with Gurpreet on this, we could specifically refer to infrastructure requirements and affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Clark and then Councillor Bellinger.
Thank you, Chair. My concerns are about the highway access. I think most of the objections are about the number of junctions heading onto Cousin Lane, and also from the houses opposite, where they feel that it would put them at a disadvantage on getting onto Cousin Lane. One of the objections is suggested maybe access through the existing access to the community the community centre. I think there are quite a number of accesses onto Cousin Lane, but the one going into the community centre is really quite obscure. It's near a little roundabout, a mini roundabout. It's near a bump in the road. It's really quite difficult to get into the community centre. So I don't think that would be a very good idea. But if the access was made wide enough and obvious enough, I don't think, you know, if the splay was okay, if it was indicated quite well, I don't see the objection to that. I think it would be an improvement. So it's not really a question, it's just an opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Was it Councillor Bellinger next?
It was, Chair, yes, thank you. Quite a controversial question that I've actually got here, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to be allowed to ask this question, but
but you will.
But I will. I'm sure you'll tell me. I'm sure you'll tell me like otherwise. Anyway, it's regarding the equation of how we've actually come to 8 flats and 9 houses. If this is something that we're actually selling as an authority, you know, wouldn't it be more financially viable if it was all houses rather than some flats thrown in? You know, is it? I suppose from a planning aspect, is this the correct type of development for this particular area? And how we've come to this particular development.
Chair, if I can just come back on that initially.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah.
Well, in terms of how the council got to those numbers, it was developed through the council assets and facilities management section. So the application actually arrived in planning as you see it now in terms of the numbers. In terms of that arrangement on that site, given that we're looking at the principle of the development with all matters reserved, it was considered that arrangement or that quantity of development on that site was considered acceptable in terms of density, and you know, it's not considered that it's overdevelopment of that site.
Thank you, Maria.
Just to add, obviously it's important with any development that we have a mix of type of properties on the site, and obviously our own planning policies lead developers to provide such a mix, and the same needs to happen on this land as our own land as well, councillors.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for officers? No, we have no objectors to speak. We have no councillors to speak, in which case over to comments or proposals. Councillor Bellinger and Councillor Baines.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose and it will go with officers' recommendations to permit.
Thank you. Councillor Baines?
I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Amendments? No. In that case, all those in favour of the proposal from officers' recommendations, sorry. Okay. Any against? Any sorry, David, are you voting against?
No, I was voting for.
Sorry, I think your picture froze.
I've got my picture up there again.
Okay.
All right, right. Now I was voting for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. In that case, we'll move on to the next application. Just scrolling through on this lot. Application 19-01327. Change of use of part of former school playing fields to wetland nature reserve. Land at Brearley Fields. Thank you. Can we have the welcome, Councillor Patient? Can we have the officer's report, please?
Yeah, Councillor, I'm presenting, but I must admit I'm having some issues with sharing my screen. So the other officers are going to help out, and Anita's going to share her screen for me on this one.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor, so I won't be a moment. I'll start sharing.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that, councillors? Have you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Yes, councillors, this is land at Brearley Fields, Modena Way. Change of use of part of former school playing fields to wetland nature reserve. We've got one letter of objection and 2 letters of support. The reason why this application is before you is that the outstanding objection we have is from Sport England. We have tried negotiating with Sport England in advance of this consideration, and actually that resulted in another letter coming from Sport England on Friday that I just need to read out the substance to you. As you are aware, we believe that the proposed development does not meet our exceptions nor paragraph 97 of the NPPF, an opinion supported by the Football Foundation. Of course, on occasion, we may not be able to reach a solution that allows us to withdraw our objection, and the council may decide that other material considerations outweigh Sport England's objection. However, having read through the committee report, we are concerned as to how the case has been presented and would like to offer the following comments. The report explains that this development is part of a wider flood alleviation project that the Environment Agency are investing in, and that consent has already been granted for a spillway from the Rochdale Canal onto the playing field. The report states that these will increase the propensity of the site to flood. It is therefore considered that the scheme is one to provide flood alleviation, not sport and recreation. Unfortunately, Sport England was not consulted by the council on either of the previous projects and therefore erred in its obligations under the GDPO, which has therefore prejudiced the use of the playing field. Sport England do not agree with the benefit to provide an open space for public recreation at the expense of loss of formal pitches on which formal pitch sports are played, and consider this is not justified, nor does the report explain the council's evidence of the needs for more amenity green space. There is no recognition in the report of the shortfall of pitches as identified within the playing pitch strategy, which is a major concern due to the lack of potential available flat spaces within the area to help meet this shortfall, and therefore the loss of the site, although difficult to manage, is not easily replaced. The site was also identified within the playing pitch strategy action plan as a site where the council could consider the value of the pitches to local sport. However, again, the report does not provide an update on this. There is no explanation of the status of the council's football fields plan and when it was adopted. The report implies that as the Calder High School no longer uses Brearley Fields, they are no longer required, and further seems to imply that a proposed application for an artificial pitch on the school by the Football Foundation is some form of mitigation. This cannot be seen as such, as any application on the site would have to be assessed separately, and there is no guarantee of Football Foundation funding. Calder High School project is not material to consideration of this application. The Football Foundation local football facilities plan for Calderdale list of priority project does refer to establishing a 9x9 artificial grass pitch at Calder High School as one of its priority projects, but Brearley Fields is also listed as a priority project for works to improve national grass pitches. The report implies that the scheme will not impact on the cricket club site because of replacement of the temporary terrace fencing and undertaking other works within its grounds as part of the wetland scheme. However, it is noted that the cricket club's site lies outside the application site boundary of this development, that a further planning application may be required for this. Whilst the council considers that the scheme offers numerous environmental benefits, our concern here is that a decision is reached with the complete implications for playing field provision being placed before planning committee. Sport England maintains its objection, and if planning committee are minded to permit the application, the council will need to refer to the Secretary of State for him to determine whether he wants to call the application in. And basically I request that a copy of this letter is placed before members of planning committee. Okay, right then, just to go through the key issues before we draw up some of the plans and photographs for you to look at. The site is within Greenbelt, but wetland under Greenbelt policy isn't seen as inappropriate development, and then it meets the relevant paragraph of the National Planning Policy Framework. Does not conflict with the purposes of the green belt because it will maintain the openness of the green belt. In terms of playing fields, obviously you've heard me read out the letter from Sport England, which obviously refers to the elements your officers have put forward for consideration on page 56 of your report. And obviously this is in terms of taking a much wider view of the value of the site and its usability. Impact on heritage assets, there's no objection from your conservation officer, as there is no impact on Brearley Bridge and therefore accords with the policies of the UDP. There are no highways objections. There are no objections from the EA, the Environment Agency, as long as it's carried out in accordance with the submitted ground modelling. The wildlife, in terms of ground conditions, it does abut the Rochdale Canal. The Canals and Rivers Trust were consulted and they have no objections subject to conditions. Wildlife conservation and design, there is quite clear support from the conservation officer. And in terms of balance of considerations, obviously it is your officers, you'll see at the bottom of page 56 of the report, on balance, it is considered that the proposals are in accordance with paragraph 99 of the NPPF. The proposals are for alternative recreational provision, and the enhancements proposed would benefit the remaining sports facilities, reducing their potential to flood. And then just finally, obviously the conclusions are that the proposal is considered to be acceptable and that your officers are recommended to committee that mindful to permit subject to the application being referred to the Secretary of State because of the outstanding Sport England objection. Right, next slide please, Anita. This is the site, and I think the next slide shows you an aerial photograph of that site. Next one please. This is the engineering on the site. As I say, the bulk of this application is actually an engineering works application. So this shows the engineering that is being done to create the wetland. Next one, please. This is cross-section, again, showing some of the engineering works that are required in terms of developing this site for the best biodiversity enhancement. Next one, please. Next cross-section. Thank you. And this is the general arrangement that shows basically the makeup of the biodiversity elements and wetland elements of the site. Next one, please. These are the photographs then which show the playing pitches in use that are to be retained, and then you'll see to the right of the screen the proposed site of the wetland, where basically we are looking at pitches that cannot be utilised at the moment because they are not in a state where sport can be played on them. Again, a close-up of that site, so you will see basically the state of the land there. Next one, please. Looking towards the cricket club. Next one, please. This is the existing layout of the site. Next one, please. And this is the wetland engineering that will take place on the site. Next one, please. And just to confirm then, we are looking at mindful to permit subject to a referral to the Secretary of State. Thank you, Anita.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for officers? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Chair. When I do go down past this site on the road, quite often it is flooded in the winter months, at least, you know, and certainly after any heavy rainfall at any time of year. And I think this is why the school have stopped using it. I can't remember the last time I saw the pitch being used for any sporting activity. And I just wonder if the council have a record of the number of days it has been used, been able to be used, or alternatively, the number of days it's been flooded, and for which stops the any sporting activity taking place.
Just to answer that, I can't say precisely in terms of days, but a decision was made some years ago now that because of flooding on the site, it wasn't worth keep repairing it and putting it back into maintenance to be used as a pitch. So basically it's had to be left because the decision was made that, you know, spending money to make a pitch perfect again that will probably then get flooded again wasn't a good use of public money. So it has not been used for a number of years now. Councillor Patient might be able to add to that, but I've got a feeling it was something around about 2017 or could even be 2015.
I'm happy to fill in the gaps.
Sorry, Scott, you can't join in until you're requested.
Sorry, Chair.
One of the questions I was going to ask was, the proposed wetlands, will that help with drainage from the retained pitch? Because like Councillor Baines, I very rarely pass it when it isn't full of water. Will that help with the drainage from the other pitch that we're keeping? Do we know?
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor. It's part of a package that will enable the remaining pitches to actually have better drainage. So that's, again, why your officers are recommending that it is part of an improved recreational package.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Can't see anybody. Okay, thank you. Where are we? We have no objector. We have two councillors, Councillor Patient and Councillor Val Stevens from no, not Todmorden.
Ebden Royd.
Ebden Royd, yes, thank you. Brain went. Ebden Royd Council. There's still only 5 minutes, so you need 2.5 minutes each. And who's going to speak first?
I'll speak first if I can, Chair.
Okay, briefly then. Yeah,
I'll be very quick. Just to say briefly on some of the issues that the Sports England objection came through that I've not seen. I think just to say there is no loss of formal pitches. Those pitches that have been mentioned haven't been used in almost a decade. There is a recognition of the Calderdale development, and I think Sports England normally do these objections, but this needs to be a special, I think, thought of in different terms, really. They mentioned it's a difficult site to manage. I'd say contrary to that, it's impossible to manage the section that they're talking about. Just to come back at a couple of those questions, and in terms of it being flooded, there is the idea of putting a bund in between the sports pitches that have been retained, which took quite a lot of work as well from Councillor Scullion to make sure that happened. The site has rewilded, and I think the planning, I think as well, they made reference to the Environment Agency and their spillway. It's in my mind that the planning application didn't affect the outline pitch curtilage. So I know, I understand why Sports England have objected, it's their right to, but I think in this instance, there are a lot of different factors. Just to say, climate change, I think it's all well rehearsed in terms of what's happening in and around Mytholmroyd and the Ludden and Foot area. Brearley Fields is a well-used recreation area. It acts as a much needed floodplain and provides valuable natural flood management solution for the local area, as well as just being right off cycle route 66 and the canal towpath, both of which are well used 365 days a year. So this is thinking about our active travel ambitions. The plan is as well to encompass a fully accessible, disability accessible route around the site, which has been done in association with the Disability Access Forum as well. I think it's worth saying that this has been really well consulted over the years, over about 4 or 5 years, thanks to our previous officer, Anne Holdsworth. There's a massive amount of interest in this scheme and people really want it to happen. There's a volunteer group ready to step into the breach and get involved. And in terms of biodiversity net gain, we see some incredible animals on that site, including rare sandpipers, deer, kingfisher. So I think this is an amount of funding attached to this pot that really needs to happen. It's part of the Calder Greening project.
Time, Scott. Okay, thank you. Val?
Thank you very much, and thank you for letting me speak, Chair. I'm currently Mayor of Hebden Royd Town Council, but also in another role, I'm also the Vice Chair of Royd Regeneration, that has been in fact the local group that has nurtured this scheme over the years. And as Scott had said, it's been well rehearsed at all our meetings probably over the last 3 years, maybe longer, with your previous officer, Anne Holdsworth. And there is a great deal of support for this. The proposal put forward is a balance of all interests, I feel. It's not been used by the school since 2012, as I understand it, so it's a long time since it's been in use. And whilst I wouldn't want to take issue with Sport England, I would perhaps think that perhaps the Town Council and the people who live in Mytholmroyd are just a little bit closer to wetlands and water than Sport England are in this particular instance. I think it balances out the needs of people who want to play football, the needs of flood alleviation, and indeed the local usage and access to a site which will be much better. If you look at the demographics of football use, it's actually a relatively narrow demographic. But if you were to look at the balance of what's being proposed on this site, it does enhance and does bring in more members of the community than potentially large areas of football pitches. I have in another existence had many dealings with Sport England and the maintenance of large areas of grassland for football use, and I know that there has been quite a significant shift to artificial pitches that can maintain use over time, because of course historically football pitches tended to be where it was boggy and where you couldn't build anything. so you end up with a winter situation where football pitches aren't always able to be used, but that's just a personal opinion. The other aspect, of course, is the biodiversity, and Hebden Royd Town Council is very firmly a climate emergency council, and declared so.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. We don't have anybody else to speak, so can we go over to members? Any proposals? Councillor Baines?
I'd move officers' recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Hutchinson?
I second.
Right. Any amendments? No. In that case, can we go to a vote on the proposal to go with officers' recommendations? All those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you. And I can't count, so was there any objectors or any abstentions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. We move on to the next one,
Chair.
which is, sorry?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, cheers, Scott. Right. Application 20-00386, the former South Edge Quarry, Brickhouse Road, Hipper Home. And can we move to officers' report, please? Who's doing it?
I'm presenting again, Chair, and Paul's just going to help with showing the presentation.
Thanks. Okay, thank you.
Just bear with me, councillors, and I'll get the presentation on screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you, members. Yes, this is another merging local plan allocation. It's the former South Edge Quarry, Brickhouse Road, for remediation and redevelopment of part of the site for residential developments with associated access, landscaping, areas of public open space and other associated infrastructure. It is a full application. We have had 139 letters of representation received, which the comments have been summarised on page 73 and 74 of the report. Missing from your report, and my apologies, is the ward member call-in and also Councillor Robinson's objection. So you will have seen it on the website. It is a long objection with appendices, but I am going to read out just the main body of that objection. As I say, this is from Councillor George Robinson. I wish for the above application to be decided by Calderdale's Planning Committee should officers recommend to permit. I also ask that councillors undertake a site visit prior to the committee meeting. My objection points are outlined below. Local residents have formed a committee to oppose this application. They have conducted a thorough investigation into the application and the site's history. I have included copies of these representations as appendices where appropriate. Employment status. The site is allocated for employment in Calderdale's Unitary Development Plan. The UDP is still effective pending the local plan's approval by the Planning Inspectorate. Section 236 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 obliges Calderdale Council to determine applications in line with the UDP unless material considerations indicate otherwise. I anticipate that the applicant will argue that Calderdale has a pressing need for residential development. However, Calderdale also has a pressing need for high quality employment space in Calderdale, as stated by the Deputy Leader of Calderdale Council. This application could therefore be refused on this ground alone, notwithstanding the further objection points below. Landfill. The site is a former landfill containing contaminated waste. The applicant is proposing to excavate 130 cubic metres of waste, separate the contaminated waste and deposit the contaminated waste into landforms. 130,000 cubic metres is substantial and is the equivalent of 52 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The contaminated waste contains asbestos fibres pursuant to the applicant's environmental statement. In my opinion, permitting the development of 174 dwellings adjacent to contaminated land forms is not appropriate for modern developments. This is an archaic practice that should be confined to history. I have enclosed the local residents committee's landfill representation in Appendix 1. This report makes the following points. The applicant's proposals may be a landfilling operation. If correct, the proposals must comply with statutory obligations, which this application does not. The applicant proposal states that the application is for remediation and redevelopment. As stated above, the proposed landforms would contain contaminated material. This therefore does not constitute as remediation pursuant to a paragraph 178 of the NPPF. I have also enclosed the resident committee's remediation representation in Appendix 2. Local plan. The site is contained in the local plan for residential housing. The local plan has not been approved by the planning inspector, and neither has Calderdale Council's charging schedule, which is required to impose the community infrastructure levy. The applicant would therefore not be subject to SIL. As a consequence, I argue that the applicant should not be entitled to rely on the site's inclusion in the local plan. Congestion. Hippenham is a congested village. Congestion during peak times regularly runs past the access point to the development, creating a danger to pedestrians and motorists. Hippenham's sensitivity test for the local plan stated that it can be clearly demonstrated that the Hippenham Crossroads junction is at an unacceptable level of congestion currently, and this is worsened by the overall predicted growth in traffic as a result of the wider local plan allegations. Due to this, the local plan prohibits development on the site until improvements have been made to the Hippenham traffic lights. Such improvements have not been implemented, therefore development should not be permitted. I have enclosed the resident committee's transport representation at Appendix 3. Air quality. Hippenham is the home of an air quality management area with a NO2 level measured at 51 milligrams per cubic metre, up from 47 milligrams per cubic metre in 2014. This site is next to an air quality management area and therefore will be detrimental to Hippenham's already poor air quality. I've enclosed the residents committee air quality representation at Appendix 4. Ecology. The site is an open area with existing wildlife and vegetation. I have made planning officers aware of a material fact regarding local wildlife. It would be prudent for this to be disclosed to the committee below the line. I have attached the residents committee ecology representation in Appendix 5. Finally, design. The proposed development is a high density at around 36 dwellings per hectare on the developed part of the site. There is also no affordable housing and little green design incorporated. This style of development does not lend itself to existing development in the area. I have attached the residents committee design representation in Appendix 6. Thank you for reading this objection. I urge you to read the appendices or to read the Residents Committee full reputation, which can be found under the Documents tab on the planning portal. This document also incorporates a useful executive summary. Okay, we have also, since the publication of the committee report, we've had one further objection, which relates to the section on transport and access, where it is concerned that with a total of 174 houses, that 90 two-way journeys seems very low estimate, and again is also concerned about nitrogen oxide levels. Okay, moving on to the presentation then. The key issues that we need to look at. Firstly, we will look at remediation of the site. The applicant is promoting a remediation strategy which minimises traffic generation and associated air quality impacts. The strategy involves the excavation of made ground and sorting processing on site, relocation of made ground on site away from the proposed development area, creation of a suitable development plateau for the residential development, and stockpiling and then capping of made ground and creation of a landscape feature on the remediated area. The objective of this strategy is to maintain as much material as possible on site and avoid the additional traffic movements which would be required to transfer waste off-site. Approximately 130,000 cubic metres of industrial made ground is proposed to be excavated and relocated from within the developable area onto the non-developable area on the west of the site. Page 76 and 77 of the report, you will see that there is a full assessment of the remediation against planning policy, and you will see the detailed comments of the Environmental Health Officer. The Environmental Health Officer is with us today if members want to ask any questions on that aspect. The Environment Agency were also consulted and made comments in relation to the remediation element of the proposal, and they raised no objections to the proposal. Your officers therefore conclude in terms of remediation that it offers an opportunity to secure development on the site within an urban area and offers public open spaces. While there has been significant concerns expressed from Objections to the proposal in relation to the impact of these remediation works on existing residents, the applicant's remediation strategy has been considered by the Environmental Health Officer and the Environment Agency, who do consider the proposal to be acceptable. Moving on then to the principle of development and a number of categories. Firstly, the loss of employment lands. Councillor Robinson is correct in that the site is allocated as a new employment site in the replacement Calderdale Unitary Development Plan. The proposal would result in the loss of potential new employment land within an allocated employment area. You will see, though, on page 79 of the report that the council's business and economy officer was consulted on the proposal and commented no issue with this application, as whilst the site is allocated for employment use, due to the high remediation costs, it is unlikely to ever be used for this purpose. Additionally, the council's employment land study in 2017 has confirmed the site is not viable or suitable for employment use. Just then, given the lack of demand for employment generating use at the site, and as we all know, the lack of a 5-year housing land supply, it is considered that the benefits of providing additional housing outweigh the harm caused by the way of loss of employment land that cannot be brought forward. In terms of greenbelt, the site does include a small area of greenbelt at the northern tip within the overall red line area. There won't be any built development on this area, so therefore it will not have any adverse impact on the greenbelt designation. Housing issues. The applicant is proposing remediation of the site and its partial redevelopment for 174 new homes, which will be a variety of sizes and house types ranging from 2 to 5 bedrooms. We're all aware of the council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply and the weight we now have to attribute to the tilted balance and the presumption in favour of sustainable development. We've looked at also in terms of the MPPF and housing requirements, obviously the need to secure a contribution towards the delivery of affordable housing. You will see on page 81 that in this instance, the applicant provided a viability appraisal, which was assessed by the council's own appointed consultants. There was really in-depth analysis of this, particularly in relation to remediation costs, but due to the abnormal costs in relation to this, on this occasion, the proposed development would not be liable to deliver a certain percentage of affordable homes. The applicant has, however, said that it will look to, if permission is granted, it will look to work with Homes England to see if there is any grant available to actually deliver some. In terms of residential amenity, you will see on page 82 of the report, we've looked at the detail assessment of the proposal against nearest properties and come to the conclusion that, subject to the condition in relation to noise amelioration, the proposal accords with policy. Layout, design and materials. Page 83 of your report gives details of design, and this again will be shown by further slides in the presentation. The overall layout is considered acceptable and provides an efficient use of land without resulting in overdevelopment of the site. The design of the house types offers a sufficient mix of accommodation, and the residents have access to large areas of open space in addition to their own private amenity space. Highways considerations, which are obviously a big consideration with this application. The page 84 to 91 of your report gives careful consideration of the various points. And again, your highways officer is here to answer your questions and also to expand on any points that have been put forward in the report. In terms of flooding and drainage, the Environment Agency, the lead local authority and Yorkshire Water were all consulted. In respect to flooding and drainage, the Environment Agency raised no objections. The lead local flood authority requested conditions be attached to any granting of approval, and that the development proposed is constructed in accordance with the flood risk assessment that was dated March this year. Yorkshire Water, as indicated, were also consulted and raised no objections, subject to a condition relating to maximum discharge rates. Wildlife conservation, part of the site actually lies within the wildlife corridor designation in the Unitary Development Plan. The Assistant Director for Neighbourhoods Ecology was consulted, and you will see the comments provided on page 92 of the report. The Conservation Officer recommended a number of conditions which involve the submission for agreement of a Biodiversity, Mitigation and Enhancement Management Plan, a Protected Species Survey and Mitigation Plan, installation of permanent bat roost or house sparrow or swift nesting features within the fabric of at least 50% of the dwellings, submission of a construction environment management plan, a lighting design strategy, and a provision of an invasive non-native species protocol. You will see from the report that overall the proposal wouldn't secure 5% net gain. However, there is a gain, however minor, and the NPPF is not prescriptive in terms of a certain percentage. In this instance, the proposal is considered to be satisfactory. In terms of trees and landscaping, the site is adjacent to Sutcliffe Wood, part of which is a designated TPO. The applicant submitted an arboricultural report, and the applicant has stated that Sutcliffe Wood will be safeguarded and extended with a mixture of trees. A stranded tree condition will be attached to any granting of planning permission. Turning then to ground conditions, the application site does fall within the British Coal Development High Risk Area. The Coal Authority were consulted and made various comments. Obviously the outcome of those discussions were that the former sandstone mining activity does pose a risk to development, but also the submitted coal mining risk assessment and coal mining recovery report was actually considered by their colleagues and was felt to be accurate. So again, the proposal accords with UDP policy. Public health, whilst the site is not within an air quality management area, obviously it is close to the Hipper Home AQMA and the Brickhouse AQMA. You will see the comments from your environmental health officer on page 95 of the report, and subject to a condition relating to electric vehicle charging, again, the proposal accords with policy. Other issues that need to be considered: education. The council's education officer was consulted and advised that there was a shortfall in terms of secondary school places, and looked for a contribution of just over £500,000. The applicant has agreed to enter into a Section 106 agreement that will address the above education contribution. Crime prevention, West Yorkshire Police were consulted and raised no objections, subject to a condition requiring the development to be built to secure by design standards. And then finally, to the northern boundary of the site, there is an existing passenger railway, and Network Rail were notified. They have no objection in principle to the development, but assert that there are various requirements to be met to avoid any impact on the safe and effective operation of the rail network. And again, conditions were recommended. Your officer's recommendation then is mindful to permit, subject to the signing of a legal agreement. Could I have the next slide, please, Paul? This is the site in question, which extends to 15.5 hectares. Have the aerial photograph, please. You will see this is.
Sorry, excuse me. Excuse me. Is it possible to move the block in the middle of the screen?
Sorry, Chair.
Okay,
I'll try.
thanks.
Yeah, that's better.
It keeps coming on and going off.
It's back on again now.
I don't quite know why it's happening like that.
Do you need to get a pointer instead of the hand?
I'll just escape from the full screen version and see if that helps.
No.
No, it's still coming on, isn't it?
It is, yes.
You do have a cursor though on this screen.
Yes.
So can you move it?
It just doesn't seem to be. I'll close the, if you just bear with me, I will close the presentation down and reopen it up and see if that helps.
Okay.
So I'll stop screen sharing for a minute.
Oh, I'm just looking at Google. It says to get rid of this problem, you should close your Chrome browser.
Right.
If you're sharing your Chrome browser and then open up a window. Yeah, if you've got something else open at the same time, it might try and sit on top of it. So just try and close anything else down.
Close the Chrome browser. Right, I'll try again to share. No.
Leave it. We'll have to.
Well, you've made
look
it
round
smaller,
it.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Apologies about this.
Okay. Paul, would you mind moving on to the aerial photograph? And just so that you can see, obviously to the north and east, you've got the residential properties along South Edge Close and Old Cottage Close. To the south, you've got the open fields leading to Brown Mills Industrial Estate. And to the west, you've got Sutcliffe Woods. Next slide, please, Paul. These series of slides show basically the built-up development and the areas that are to remain as green space post-remediation. Next slide, Paul. And next slide, Paul. This is the illustrative master plan. As you can see, the green areas, and you can just about see the sort of layout of the housing development. Next slide, Paul. This is a series of slides then that go through the various house types, showing the elevations and the floor plans. Next slide, Paul. These are obviously the sections where it is close to existing properties, so that you can see the relationship of the new build to the existing development. It's an illustrative section. Right, here we now have some photographs, which this is first is the view east across from Sutcliffe Wood to South Edge Close. Again, this is a view north towards Townhouse Hill and Kirk Lane, with Sutcliffe Wood in the on the left-hand side. The view along the western boundary of the site, again with Sutcliffe Wood, but this time on the right-hand side. View east from central part of the site. View south towards Brow Mills Industrial Estate. And view towards Brickhouse Road, and that's the South Edge Works. These are the properties at Old Cottage Close, and this is the eastern part of the site just to the right. And this is the view south towards Brow Mills Industrial Estate from the boundary with Old Cottage Close. And this is the view west across the central part of the site towards Sutcliffe Wood. The view south towards Brow Mills Industrial Estate and the A Road. And the view north from approximate entrance point towards Old Cottage Close. View west across the southern boundary to Brow Mills Industrial Estate. And the view north from the southern boundary, and you will see the approximate entrance point indicated on the right of the screen. View northwest across the site from the southern boundary. And the view west across the site again from the approximate entrance point. That concludes the presentation. As indicated, the recommendation is mindful to permit, subject to the signing of a legal agreement. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, members.
Right, thank you very much. Members got any questions for officers? Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as previously, I will turn off my video so as I don't lose connectivity again, because I've just lost it in the last 15 minutes again. So I'll turn my video off. I have several questions, Chair, if I may go through them.
Yeah.
The first question, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. The first question then is to planning officers: why has this application come before the planning committee when it was stated originally some years ago that this would not be developed until some form of substantial improvements were made to Hippodrome traffic lights? And this was said to ward councillors and members of the public in the area by Richard Seaman. And of course, we've still got the UDP plan here, not the local plan. Question 2 is 220 HGV movements per day over a 12-month period will have a major impact on the Hippodrome Road network. It is mentioned in the report that the waste may go to Bradford, but how can we be sure of this? And what happens if this waste then goes through Brickhouse Town Centre, and what impact would it have on Brickhouse Town Centre? Question 3, the removal of this waste, which is dangerous waste. There's no mention of the wagons being covered to prevent airborne dust being transferred into the atmosphere. Question 4, 174 houses are proposed here, which will be around about 360 vehicles per day accessing Brickhouse Road. This would have a major impact on the road network and also add to the pollution of the AQM areas in both Hippodrome and Brickhouse. And question 5, the objectives of the remedial strategy to maintain as much material as possible on site and avoid additional traffic movements. This would require a transfer of waste off-site to approximately 130,000 cubic meters, which is absolutely huge, and this will be relocated to the west of the site. Now, this waste, it's mentioned in the report, does contain asbestos fibres. Do we know what fibres they are? Is it brown or blue asbestos? There's no mention of regulations regarding this, and in my opinion, asbestos waste is best left alone. And 130,000 cubic meters, what will be the finished height to the west of this when this is all piled up there? And also then going back to the Hippodrome traffic junction, it was mentioned that there'll be a 106 agreement towards education. Why not a contribution towards any improvements to Hippodrome traffic junction? Thank you, Chair. I hope everybody's got all those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who's answering. I can't see.
I'll start. Yeah, I'll start, Chair, but obviously I'll have to pass over to some of my colleagues. Obviously, in terms of policy, we're all aware that, things do move on with planning policy. We are in a very different environment now. We are working with the requirements of the MPPF. So that's why, unfortunately, things do change. When you look at applications that were considered some years ago, we now have to look at them in the light of the policies we have to work with today. I think in terms of all that, the only other part that I will answer is about the question about contributions to the crossroads. I think I said in my report, viability is really, really difficult with this scheme, and we had the hard decision in terms of looking at what was the most pressing need, and in this case it is the need to meet that education contribution. So viability has been looked at very carefully, and unfortunately there is just no money there to introduce other elements. Can I pass on now probably to Andrew to talk about the traffic movements?
Just before you do that, Marie, would you be the right person to make a comment on the height of this, the finished height of this 130,000 cubic meters of earth that will be moved towards the west of the site?
I don't know whether
huge amount.
whether it can actually come from the applicant team, they will probably be able to answer that question better than myself, and I know that they're indicating that they can. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, in response to the comments from Councillor Curtin, the first one I've got noted here is Brickhouse Town Centre. I mean, this site, along with the other proposed allocations, was assessed in our strategic traffic model, and it was all set out in, well, sorry, in terms of the cumulative impacts of this site and other sites, and that was set out in traffic note 13, the local plan evidence base. If you search for that, you should find that. So we did assess all these sites cumulatively, and obviously with the A641 scheme and other mitigating improvements, the view was that the quantum of traffic from those developments will be acceptable. In terms of the immediate location, Hipperholm Crossroads, of course, you know, we all know it's congested, but I mean, one of the reasons why we are unable to sustain an objection on the amount of dwellings that are proposed is the modelling indicates that the impact, which is 3.3% in terms of additional traffic compared to existing traffic going through the crossroads, and the additional 17 seconds of delay on the Halifax Road approach, which is the worst case. That has to be assessed in terms of the severity of impact threshold and the NPPF, and we know from the previous appeal decisions for the 50 houses opposite at Crossley that we couldn't defend that at the appeal, and the inspector's comments were considered. So we've come to the same conclusion here, really. I appreciate it is quite a large impact, but again, against the background of the several thousands of vehicles going through this area on a daily basis, it would be very difficult to defend, in my view. And like,
but if I can just ask a question there, when does all this lot stop? Because, you know, this traffic junction, as you know now, Andrew, is well past 100% capacity. And we've just been previously discussing other application pond quarries. It could well be that their vehicles will come through Hipperholm as well, you know. And, you know, they're queuing all the way back to Hove Edge at times.
I mean, well, this is why Maria can come in probably afterwards. It's a plan-led system, and once we've got a local plan, obviously, any other sites will be easier to defend. You know, we've only got a small number of allocated sites left in the area, and there are no further sites in the Hipperholm area. But yeah, on the final point, in terms of goods vehicles, large vehicles, again, while it's a large number, we've got to compare that, as the applicants have, against the existing heavy goods vehicles. It's a strategic route. It does carry a significant proportion of goods vehicles, and again, percentage-wise, it's not. It couldn't be a class of severe impact. So yeah, we can offer really no objection on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Can I just ask the chair?
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Who will answer the question about this waste being moved around the site and also from the site when we do know that it contains asbestos fibres, and how will those dangers be mitigated?
Sorry, the agent indicated they would answer those questions.
Have we nobody from environmental health though that can assist as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chair, whether Diane Marsh wants to come in and say anything on that point, because obviously she's looked at all the submitted information from the applicant.
I mean, the major concern I've got there is this asbestos dust floating around the air, especially when we get to the summer months and the soil is drier. You know, how will we control that? And you know, and it's right next to a densely populated area.
Hi everybody, and through you, Chair. Yes, the land is contaminated. The environmental statement has submitted a remediation strategy, which we have conditioned in condition 8 of the proposed conditions. The remediation strategy also covers unforeseen contamination. And I understand from section 8 of the environmental statement report, it does cover asbestos fibres, because we don't know exactly what's in here, so further work is needed to be done. So condition 8 and 9 do cover about the contamination of the land, but section 8 of the environment statement report does cover asbestos, potential of asbestos fibres and what they would do with those if they were found. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
I think so for the moment, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the National Planning Policy Framework, sections 8 and 9, particularly about promoting sustainable transport, I'm very pleased to see the interactions between the highways officers and the developers in terms of trying to find a better layout for the proposals. But it still seems to me that, you know, with all these houses with very limited visitor parking, that the idea of bays off the roads, I can only count 5 for a development of 174 houses, which seems woefully inadequate for the needs. There's also the highways officers have also recommended cycle access via Sutcliffe Wood Lane, because Brickhouse Road is such a dangerous, intimidating road for cyclists to use. But that seems to have gone by the board in any conditions that might need to be applied to the proposals. Similarly, traffic, when it can flow, moves down Brickhouse Road at quite a lick, and with this number of houses, there's likely to be and the development on the other side of the road, there's likely to be a need for safe crossings. But any mention of puffin or pedestrian crossing seems to have disappeared from the firm proposals, unless I've missed them. So on those aspects, I'm not sure that it really does promote pedestrians and cyclists above the need of motorists. West Yorkshire Combined Authority commented regarding funding a package of sustainable travel measures of £89,000 to go towards supporting bus usage. But again, that seems to, I can't see any mention of that in the eventual proposals. And if I can get back to the way in which the impact on the schools, local schools, is calculated, it states that you're expecting an increased demand of 27 secondary school places from 174 new homes. Well, are you filtering out the residents of these homes by lack of children? It just doesn't seem to be, that doesn't sound right to me. So I'd welcome some comments on that, on those points.
Just to answer on the education side of things, it is based, as I said in some of the previous presentations, it's based on the predicted future capacity. So it's not necessarily saying that development's only going to generate 27 secondary school students and the need for places, but that is where they see the level where the capacity is lacking, because the schools will already have some capacity for future development but can't meet all the capacity on that. I think in terms of sustainable travel, again, I'd just like to bring Andrew in, because as you quite rightly said, Councillor, there has been a lot of discussions with the applicant team on this, just to point out that some of the things where contributions have been requested, as I've stated, the applicant team put in a viability appraisal that was tested not once but probably 3 times by our own consultant, and unfortunately there was only a certain level of contribution that the development could provide. But Andrew, do you want to say anything more on the discussions that Councillor Hutchinson has referred to?
Yes, thanks, Maria. Yeah, a couple of points I've noted. Yeah, the cycle route through Sutcliffe was, yeah, I should have put a comment on actually. I did have a walk around there, and I knew it was steep, but it's very steep. I mean, even with a mountain bike, it would be quite difficult. There'll be a lot of regrading works, bridges. It's probably only really suitable as a walking route through to the west. So I've not asked for any improvements, because we do try and convert pedestrian routes to shared pedestrian cycle routes where feasible. The crossing is actually, the controlled pedestrian crossing is covered in condition 27. Yeah, there's off-site highway works there, which would include a control. We haven't exactly identified the position yet, because colleagues have been looking into the position to the south, we think, given the location of schools and crossings to the north. And there are some informal crossings within the islands, the hatched areas either side of the access. But there will be a need for a controlled, light controlled crossing somewhere to the south.
Okay, any further questions?
Sorry, in the Wicker comment,
Sorry, Steve.
The Wicker comment on funding a package for sustainable travel measures. I get the point that this is marginal. The developer feels it's marginally financially viable, and so we're not expecting to see any. Really, there's no commitment to affordable housing in the whole of this development, and the various other contributions we can't expect to see.
Yeah, so the only final point I could make is that there is a travel plan condition as well, and the sort of softer minor measures, they will be included as measures within the travel plan.
Okay, Councillor Baines.
Thank you. It's I'm just going back to the traffic impact. And I know the figures which are given are during peak periods, but it's from my experience, and I do use this road quite a lot on Brickhouse Road. Certainly coming up from Brickhouse, which is the route I do most, it takes a minimum of 2 or 3 light changes to get through Whipper Home traffic lights. And that's sort of any time during the normal working day. I think, this is greatly underestimated, the amount of traffic and the delays there on that junction. And we know, there's a history of Whipper traffic lights causing horrendous traffic issues to the borough for as long as I can remember. And there's never been a solution without demolishing a lot of the buildings around the crossroads, which is not acceptable because of the buildings themselves are listed, I believe. So, I do question whether we have looked into this deeply enough regarding the flow of traffic. Certainly, off peak, and I do know it usually goes into sort of 4 or more changes in lights during the busy periods for you to get through those lights. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Can't quite see everybody. Have you got the hand up? Okay, thank you. And we have an objector who wishes to speak, Mr. Pitt.
That's me.
Thank you. You've got 5 minutes, yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Whipper Home residents. The disruption, stress and anxiety caused by the submission of these proposals at the height of the pandemic is impacting on the health and well-being of residents. We would ask councillors to consider how you would feel if likely illegal landfill and remediation on an industrial scale was being proposed right next to your homes. The site location close to motorway links means that residents are likely to be commuters, and the housing will bring little benefit to employment in the area. This high-density housing development is heavily biased towards large dwellings, with only 29% of two-bedroom dwellings provided, against a policy need of 53%. It contains no affordable housing, despite the applicant's provision for 15% in the draft LDP. Priority is given to cars, with poor provision for walkers and cyclists. It is reliant on a separate public amenity area to even approach meeting NPPF. Historically, the site was operated as a controlled industrial waste tip for around 40 years until 1992. The applicant proposes to expose, dig up and landfill mountains of contaminated industrial waste to the top of a high west-facing landfill ridge. Less than 40% of the site will be developed, yet the whole site will be needed for the waste tipping. The impact of this uncontrolled waste tipping on the ecology and the environment and on the public health of residents will be disastrous. NPPF 178 and the Contaminated Land Act require, as a minimum, removal of all contamination for a site to be remediated, yet the remediation strategy only proposes to move contamination from the development area to the public amenity area within the site. It is therefore not remediation at all. Look at the trial pit photos. This is plastic, wood, metal, carpet, etc. that is being landfilled, all non-inert and subject to landfill consent. EA comments on the application state that contaminated soil that is or must be disposed of is waste. Its handling, transport, treatment and disposal are subject to waste management legislation. It is therefore likely, therefore that the formation of the public amenity area is subject to landfill consent, yet the applicant's proposals do not even recognise the waste disposal as landfill, let alone address the issues. The implications for the proposed public amenity area are huge. The Landfill Directive requires that landfill must be sited away from residential and recreational areas and enclosed to prevent unauthorised access, yet the proposals show housing backing onto the landfill and play spaces for children on it. Pipework arrays, storage tanks, gas power plant and a flue stack will be required to manage leachate and gas emissions. This will be a secure industrial landscape in stark contrast to the applicant's proposed public amenity area. The Environment Agency is the UK regulator for landfill and waste management. The applicant's proposals describe the remediation tipping works, but provide no justification against regulatory requirements. In particular, the proposals ignore NPPF 42 and waste legislation requirements to, wherever possible, progress the operational consents for waste treatment and disposal in parallel with the planning application to inform your decision. The planning recommendation to permit does little more than repeat the applicant's proposals. There is no evidence that the council has met its regulatory obligation prior to planning approval to consider distances from landfill to residential and recreational areas, or to consult with the AEA in this respect. The legal and permitting status of the waste is not considered by the council, despite EA comments that this should be done, and there is no recognition that a separate planning approval is required for the landfill. The planning recommendation to permit even includes a condition for the applicant to comply with its own non-compliant remediation strategy, even though EA comments indicate that it must not do so.
1 minute remaining.
If you approve this planning application, you approve proposals for likely massive illegal waste tipping. You adopt the applicant's remediation strategy as the basis for landfill control and thereby usurp the legal authority of the Environment Agency. You take a decision that is outside the scope of the council's authority. Every leg of Hippo Junction is over capacity at peak periods. The LDP predicts significant impacts from small increases in traffic and requires that this development does not take place until the junction is improved. A site and a design that fails to meet housing need and is non-compliant with NPPF, a remediation strategy that is not fit for purpose, illegal waste tipping, a callous disregard for public health and safety, wanton destruction of habitats, unacceptable traffic and air quality impacts, community infrastructure levy avoidance, and landfill tax avoidance, a recommendation that appears to be ultra vires. Everyone loses if this planning application is approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Have members got any questions for the objector? Yes, Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question for the objector, but it's maybe something that environmental health might want to
Can we save it to the point at which we ask officers at the end then?
Okay,
Thank you.
if you wish to deal with that,
Yeah,
yeah.
rather.
Thank you.
So, any questions for Mr. Pitt? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Pitt.
Okay.
And Councillor Robinson wishes to speak. Thank you, George.
Indeed, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, and thank you, officers, for your consideration. It has been a long meeting, so it's nice to end on a simple one, and we only require a simple rejection today. There's been some really interesting questions that have been asked so far. Councillor Hutchinson has hit the nail on the head. Collectively, we have a big decision to make today. We're not only deciding on 174 houses, but also the remediation or possible landfill of 130,000 cubic meters of waste. Now, I'm sure you'll all take the courageous decision and reject this application. And my friend, indeed, Mr. Pitt, has gone into substantial detail about the waste elements. But just to drill down on this a little further, the majority, if not all of the waste, is going to remain on the site. Landforms of contaminated waste are going to be created next, they're going to be capped off next to residential homes. This seems to contravene the landfill directive. Why is this important? It's important because I actually received a comment from a resident the other day, which said that fire engines have actually been to the site to deal with underground combustion caused by this landfill. It's absolutely inconceivable that in the 21st century, we're proposing to dig up a landfill to turn it into another landfill. From Mr. Pitt's informed speech, it is clear that the legal position relating to the remediation plans is uncertain, and it is also politically and also immorally responsible for the council to condone these remediation plans. Now on to traffic. You know, I've presented to you members many times about Hip Home's congestion woes. The report seems to be a congestion denier, saying that the completed development would not have significant effects on the operation of the roads. I'd just like to question, and I appreciate, Mr. Demock, your comment about the 3.3 additional traffic, but the report states 6% increase on Brickhouse Road alone, and that's on page 67, so possibly we could seek clarification on that as well. The local plan, this site is in the local plan, and the site assessment report says that the development of this site is conditional on Hip Home light improvements, but for some reason this domestic planning application is conditional on no such improvements. I therefore don't understand what has changed between this domestic planning application and the site's conditionality on traffic light improvements in the local plan. Now, I'm sure officers will refer members to the infamous appeal of 2017, that appeal that sends shivers down our spines when it comes to Hip Home Crossroads. But that appeal can indeed be distinguished on the facts. That appeal related to 50 homes. It related to 28 additional two-way trips, whereas this application is for 174 homes and indeed 90 additional two-way trips. So therefore, arguing against this application on the point of congestion, I do think a precedent has not been set by that appeal, and I do think we can argue against this application on congestion. Regarding air quality, you'll know we have an air quality management area with a nitrogen dioxide pollutant level of 48 micrograms per cubic meter. This is in excess of the specified level in the air quality directive. And I appreciate I've got a minute left, Gurpreet. Now, even the thing about air quality is the AQMA. Air quality, poor air quality doesn't respect boundaries. It doesn't stop at the red line of the AQMA and think I'm going to go no further. No, air quality, this site, even though it is next to the air quality management area, it's still subject to poor air quality that is blighting my residents in Hip Home. Now, thank you, members. I've got 30 seconds left, Gurpreet, so I might just end with this. I don't understand why the council, I appreciate we need to take viability into account, but I don't understand why we're so keen to appease developers and their commercial interests rather than our own residents. We've mentioned that there wasn't enough money or viability for the section 106 and also for traffic light improvements, but I think this should be of paramount importance before we approve development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Robinson? I can't see anybody.
Thank you, Chair.
No? Okay, thank you, George. Sorry, with you in a second. Oh, right, yes. So the agent wishes to speak. Claire Linley. Hello.
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Hi.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Claire Linley, the Head of Planning at Strata Homes. Good afternoon, Chair and members, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm not going to repeat everything that the planning officer said within her report, but I just want to outline the key points that I believe the committee should bear in mind today when considering the application. The site has a historic long-standing development plan allocation for employment development, but no development has taken place since its allocation over 14 years ago. This is principally because the costs of remediation required prior to any development taking place are prohibitively expensive, rendering any commercial scheme unviable. The adopted development plan's intended lifespan was only up until the 31st of March 2016, and the site has now been recommended by officers for the council for reallocation for residential development via the emerging Calderdale local plan. We're proposing the remediation of the site and its partial redevelopment for 174 new homes in accordance with the site's draft allocation. The remainder of the site will simultaneously provide an attractive green edge to the development and a generous area of public open space. This represents a significant opportunity to enhance biodiversity at the site by including new tree cover, landscaping and wildflower meadows. The application is made in the context of a particularly pressing need for new housing in the borough, and the development will make a valuable contribution towards housing requirements. We're aware that many local residents are concerned with the highways impact of the development. However, in terms of the impacts on Hipperholme Crossroads, in both the morning peak hour, which is 7:30 to 8:30 a.m, and the evening peak hour, which is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m, only 54 additional two-way vehicle trips are predicted to pass through the junction. Just to put this in context, this level of impact at the junction is less than one additional vehicle per minute at these peak periods. Given that the total traffic flows through the junction can approach around 2,900 vehicles per hour at peak times, the impact is an extremely small percentage and will be barely noticeable within daily variations in traffic flows. As you'll note from the officer's report, it's suggested that HGV movements will be restricted to avoid school peak periods, which we are happy to agree to. The site's located in a sustainable location next to existing residential area within convenient walking distance to the centre of Hipperholme, and future residents will be able to access key local facilities by sustainable transport modes. There are no road safety issues predicted to arise from the proposals, and the residual cumulative impacts of the development are not considered to be severe in the context of the NPPF. In terms of environmental protection, the Environment Agency and your officers have not raised any objections to the scheme. To be able to progress with the works on site, a licence will be required from the Environment Agency, which will provide an extra level of control for the remediation of the site. This will allow the development to take place under these rigorous controls. The proposals have been developed in consultation with council officers over several years, and the scheme has also been presented to local ward councillors and the local community. The overarching benefits are significant, and through the remediation and subsequent delivery of new homes on this sustainable site, regeneration will be secured and future investment catalysed. In summary, the proposals will bring high quality development to this area of Calderdale and will bring forward much needed new housing on this allocated site. I would therefore ask the committee to support the officer recommendation to defer and delegate the application, subject to the signing of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Has any members got questions for the agent?
Yeah.
Councillor
Please,
Curtin.
Chair. Yeah, thank you. Could you make some comments, please, which I asked earlier on, about what height would this land would be when it's to the west of the site, when all this 130,000 cubic meters have been placed up there?
So at the highest points, obviously it'll undulate across the site to give kind of different landforms, but at the highest points it would be 10 metres.
Well, it's a huge height, is it not?
I think if you ask Paul, we provided some sections which show the landform against the housing, which are quite, they were in the presentation, and they're quite useful to kind of give you that view on what it will.
Just the other thing that I wanted some information on was the asbestos content of the waste there, you know, and how that would be controlled.
Well, obviously that will all form part of the licence application with the Environment Agency. We've obviously done some quite a lot of site investigation so far, but until we get in there and start processing and moving the waste, we don't know 100% what is in there. As part of the development of the remediation strategy through the Environment Agency licence procedure, all of that will be ironed out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the agent, Councillor Bellinger?
Yeah, it's just a bit of an observation, really, and it might be useful to the for the agent that with this application and the first application that we've had this evening, we're taking.
Sorry, Councillor Bellinger, you can't relate this application to any other.
No, what I'm saying is
it contravenes the planning system.
With regards to the removal of the waste from this site, then,
yeah,
rather than it being on the site itself, if there was somewhere closer within the area, could it be taken there instead?
It's not being removed from the site. It's been moved from part of the site where the houses are going to the western part of the site.
Mm.
That's what I mean. Rather than it sort of like building up, like Councillor Curtin was saying with the height, rather than having that height, could it be taken off site and dumped somewhere else where there's actually a big hole to fill?
We looked at that option. That's set out within the environmental statement, but you'd be looking at a lot more vehicle movements and weighing up kind of the two options. They were both looked at in a lot of detail, and this came out as the preferred option in terms of level of impact.
Thank you. Councillor Porritt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still trying to get my head around what the remediation work will look like in terms of making the ground safe and acceptable for people to live next to. Looking at some of the descriptions of the contamination and the fact that there is currently a smell of decomposition in the area, and that it's, you know, there's risk of ground gas and so on. Is all of that unpleasant, dangerous, potentially waste, you're saying it's remaining on site, and yet it would then become acceptable? I'm just confused as to how that works, and if you could explain that a little bit more clearly for me so I can understand that. Thank you.
So, I mean, we've had discussions with various different remediation contractors who obviously will need to come on board with the project. What we're doing is taking out, I may need Ben to jump in at this point, he's our engineer, but I'll have a stab and then I'll let him add or correct me. We're basically taking out waste on the shallowest parts of the site, which is the area that we're developing. That won't all be uncovered and taken out and moved all at one point. Obviously, it'll be a phased process to only uncover certain areas at certain times. We've also been told by remediation contractors that the way the waste will be capped and treated in its new location will be a lot more effective and safer than it is as it currently is being stored. So we do believe that there'll be an improvement in the capping.
Right. Do you want the engineer to come back in now, Claire? Sorry.
Could I just ask a question, Chair?
Well, go ahead. Yes, Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you. Where the ground is left untouched, then, and then some of this earth is mounded up, will it still be necessary to have ventilation pipes to vent methane gases, as the whole site now has got pipes all over it to ventilate the underground methane gases?
Yes, I believe so. But Ben, can you confirm on that?
Where is he? Oh, there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello there. Thank you for having me. Yeah, just to kind of basically give a bit of an overview.
Hello.
I think he's frozen. Ben, you might want to turn your video off. That might be better.
Apologies, am I here?
Yes.
Yeah, still here. Sorry, sorry. Laptop plays up occasionally. Just to kind of pick up on the points there. We would be excavating it in certain kind of areas. At the moment, there's kind of a cap placed on the site, which is about kind of a metre thick of material, which wasn't really done to any sort of standard. But that cap in thickness does vary, which is why in certain parts of the site, that's kind of not to a certain standard. It might only be a few 100 millimetres thick. We'd be looking at kind of excavating, retreating the soils as possible, and reusing any of the suitable soil material within that to then basically replace under the development platform. The other material would go on top of the existing sort of landfill area to the west of the site, and then recapped. There would be gas trenching as there is currently, and that'll be part of the Environment Agency licence and procedures that we'd go through for that. So kind of going from kind of forward to where the site was done prehistorically, there would be kind of a lot more sort of licence and legislation to kind of dictate what can and can't be done on the site.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Porritt.
Yeah, no, if I can just come back. Obviously, one of the issues we've got at the moment is the degradation of the pipes and the build-up of ground gas. So would there be some kind of maintenance contract or something in place to ensure that this, I mean, I don't know, I'm just really uncomfortable with this idea of people living next door to a landfill site with gases being emanating from it. I'm finding it difficult to picture as like selling it as a desirable site to live on. And yeah, what the maintenance ongoing would be to maintain the safety of a landfill site next to people's homes. I'm still struggling to get my head around it a little bit.
Yeah, I can appreciate your point, Councillor Parrott there. I think the existing situation, the site already does have basically a licence on it, which I think is a section 52 with the council. That does have a gas trench around the boundary, and that does have the gas vent pipes in at the moment, which the landowner is responsible for taking those measurements and submitting them to the council, I believe. So that scenario would still be kind of the case if there wasn't any development or not. It just means that would now fall under basically a new Environment Agency licence agreement, rather than the existing one that's there.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Bellinger, and then Maria wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the maps now, actually, of the area, and there's two fairly new developments there already, which is Old Cottage Close and South Edge. How close are those to the methane gas emission pipes at the moment?
The pipes at the moment, I believe, are just kind of the other side of the boundary of their fences, I believe, in most cases.
There was also a photo in one of the presentation slides that actually showed you could see the houses and one of the gas pipes, I believe.
Yeah. Sorry, Maria, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, really, Chair, just to kind of touch on where you're going with this. I mean, obviously, this is a contaminated site. that is kind of, you know, governed by outdated legislation. Part of the reasoning for putting this site forward is to basically make that site safer, and also obviously in doing that we need the funds with a viable end use. So the whole thing is about using new technology to actually make this site safer, but also we obviously need an end use to pay for all that. So it is, I think you were coming to that in the sort of discussion that was going on in the last 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Right, any more questions for the agent? Have I missed anybody?
Maybe just one
Councillor
question,
Curtin.
Chair, if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I think, you know, I don't know what the agent might comment about that, but I think the only way to make this site completely safe is to remove all this contaminant and take it all off site and start afresh with it all, because, you know, it is a very badly contaminated site. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for the agent? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Does the agent wish to make a comment about that, Chair?
Sorry?
Chair, does the agent wish to make a comment about that?
Okay,
the removal of all the contaminants off site and all the land?
As I say, it was something that we did look at, and we looked at various options before choosing this one, and we feel that the impact of this one is lesser than taking all of the waste off site to an unknown location.
Okay, thank you.
I think just in response, if I could just follow up, I think it's mainly due to the kind of the distance between the kind of the, you know, closest landfill sites, really. I suppose if we're struggling to kind of find anywhere to place it, so it made sense from kind of an air quality and kind of traffic impact on those kind of the area just to the north, try and retain as much of it on site as we could, rather than travelling at greater distances.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Members, comments, questions, proposals? Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm not happy about what we've heard this evening at all, and I would put a motion forward that we refuse this application based on contaminated land placing the development and users at risk of asbestos contaminated land and other contaminants that might be in the ground, the major impact it will have on Hipperholm Traffic Junction and Brickhouse Road, which it will. And there's also on page 71, it just mentions there of an application outline in 1996. The reasons for refusal given was the absence of improvements to the traffic junction of the A58 and A644. And that's what the Secretary of State for Transport said in 1996. And of course, this junction has already increased massively. And also it will add further to the air implications, the air quality management area of Hipperholm. So I would recommend that we refuse the application on those grounds.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baines.
I would second that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Bellinger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I find myself in a similar position as we did with the an application earlier on with this one. Everything seems to be covered, all our questions seem to be answered. So I think I'll probably find it difficult to object to this. So I think on this occasion I'll be going with officers' recommendations to permit.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Similarly, I have a lot of reservations about the potential downside of this development with limited gains, and I would suggest that paragraphs 178 in the National Planning Policy Framework, 102, 103, 108, 109 and 110 may provide grounds for supporting the motion.
To refuse, right. Other comments? Right. Any amendments? Can I ask the planning officer? Sorry, Gurpreet.
Just to clarify, was Councillor Bellinger's proposal an amendment? Because he mentioned he would be going with officer's recommendation. Was that an amendment to the original motion, or was it not?
Sorry, Paul.
It was just a straightforward proposal to go with officer's recommendations.
Right. Okay. In that case, can we have a seconder? So I'll second that motion. Okay. Right. So here we go again. So we have an amendment which we have to vote on first. All those in favour of the amendment to support officer's recommendations, please show. 3. Okay. All those opposed to going with officer's recommendations? 1, 2, 3, 4. That motion fails. So the original motion to vote for refusal. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. That's 4. All those against? That's 3. So any abstentions? In case I've missed anybody? No. In that case, the proposal is to refuse. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.